Hello.
Hi.
Welcome everyone to Time Theft Today.
A normal time theft for the first time
Yes.
in almost a month.
Oh yeah. I mean, we were at our normal time slot last week, right?
Yeah,
But
but
it was
just we had
still a very
guests.
special episode. Yeah.
Right, exactly. It was special and fancy.
Yes. And this is more of a hanging out episode,
Yeah,
as
we
it
we
were.
uh, I we considered doing more cast report stuff because that is a thing that is worth talking about, but I decided I didn't want to do that and I wanted to play a
Yeah.
video game with my friend. So
Yeah, we're just chilling. Welcome everyone. Europeans, I have a newfound appreciation for the fact that my own culture is not the neutral default one, because I've been hanging out with my English uncle and cousin this week, and as soon as I came over to their Airbnb, I was like, "So what do y'all wanna do?" And they start and my uncle grew up here, so he's just become acculturated to England over the last 18 years, but my cousin lived there all her life, and she started laughing at me when I said "y'all." She was like, "They actually say 'y'all' here?"
Oh my god,
And
that's
I was
so
like,
funny.
"Yeah," and she was like, "You sound like a cowboy, like a cartoon." And sh and just like all kinds of things I say that I don't think of myself as particularly, like, having a lot of strong cultural signifiers or
Well, we're
whatever.
Midwestern too. Like it's not just that
Mhm.
we're American, which is very much the like, oh, we're the default culture,
Right.
but we're
Hegemony.
also right, we're also Midwestern, which is very much the like default accent and the default. And y'all, the only I think probably we say y'all because we're queer more than anything else. I don't know about you, but
Well, I say "y'all" because I have Southern family,
that yeah.
you
I
know?
I say y'all because a very good friend of mine had Southern family, and so I
Mm.
adopted it. But then I did it more purposefully later because it's gender neutral. Um,
Mhm. It's a very needed word, just like a lot of,
right.
like, AAVE has tenses that standard white English doesn't have. It's like, we need the word "y'all." It's so
Yeah.
useful.
Yep. Weasel proof first time chat at work right now. Lol. Hell yeah. That is the platonic
Fuck
ideal
yes.
of a first time chat. You've got an
Yes.
animal in Weasel poof. Sorry. Got an animal in your name and you're time thefting.
Yes. You are already completely getting what this is about, no notes. Welcome welcome to the family, and, great. Keep not doing work.
Hell yeah.
Um Yeah. Yeah, my cousin said that, like, just everybody here is super friendly and super loud, and
Yeah.
that everything physically is enormous. The sidewalks are enormous,
Yep.
the streets are enormous, the seats are enormous, um, and that it's just very silly and small over there in comparison,
Yeah.
which was very interesting.
That is interesting. Um, that's fascinating. Yeah,
Yeah.
my favorite my friend a good friend of mine did grad school in London, and the funniest thing that they told me about that time is that they call it Crimbo. Christmas is
That's
Crimbo.
They're so unserious over there. It's fairy liquid and Crimbo and
Wait,
all
what is
kinds of stuff.
fairy liquid?
It's dish soap.
Oh my god, that's hilarious.
Yeah. Yeah, they're so unserious over there.
We love
Yeah,
you.
so it
We love you.
yes, we love our English, viewers. Seb, it's Farrar, so many people. But y'all fucking silly.
Yeah.
River hexes. Yeah.
Martin, conditioned Bleen. It's over there too.
Mhm. Yes. Just silly. So it made me actually feel not pride in being American, obviously, but it made me feel like, "Oh, wow, I do have, like, a linguistic fingerprint,"
Yeah, and that's that
you
culture
know?
shit we were talking about
The
where it
culture
feels like
shit.
we don't have it, but we do. And it's I you know the one thing that is my most Midwestern thing.
Oh, yeah, how you say
Have we
milk?
I say milk, which is a thing I'm shocked we haven't discussed on this show. Is there any other milk heads?
Yeah.
When people are usually so shocked when I say that. I specifically remember because uh because
Milk.
I was in Chicago with like you and some other people, and I said it just like, and everybody like
Was like,
milk.
oh, well, because it's that you are unrepentant, that you have
Oh
not
yeah.
taken steps to correct it. My sister says milk. I have definitely gone through, especially the like academic conditioning thing of
Mm.
like, I can't, I need to have NPR voice. I can't talk like that, you know, like I've assimilated
No, hell no.
milk.
It's Melk, like Melk Gibson. It's not Melk. Some people say Melk, but that's not me. It's Melk.
Milk.
No, I'm proud of it, and will never change. And I can't wait to move somewhere where it's weirder. I used to say towel, um, and I don't anymore, which is a shame. I don't say bagel, but I do say it when it's a bagel, egg, and cheese, because a bagel, egg, and cheese is weird.
Bagel. It's a bagel with egg and cheese. That's not a one word
No, it's a bagel, egg, and
creation.
cheese. It's that's what I
I,
grew
I,
up eating is bagel, egg,
I'd
and
be like,
cheeses.
what the fuck are you asking for? A bag full of eggs and cheeses? What's oh, Pello. Also, hello, Deathbot.
Hello.
Pello is I still have to really struggle to fix
Why?
that one
Why are you fixing
because
it? You're ashamed
because
of yourself.
I'm ashamed of myself. Yeah, yeah. I've got
Oh,
some inner work to do. Yeah,
Pello was another one. I'm pretty sure I don't have memory of
Pello
saying that one, but
definitely.
I'm pretty sure I said that one as a small child and then like unlearned it um before I was aware of it. But no, I will always say pop.
Pop.
This is a pop show for sure. That is
Yeah, I've that's another one I like had intentionally once I moved here. I was like,
really Chicago. They
yeah,
don't say pop. I thought they said pop in Chicago.
I guess I don't know. There's a lot of Wisconsinites here. There's a lot of
And they don't.
displaced. Yeah, like yeah, they say there's soda people. So there's an Iowa soda people. I'm pretty sure. So I've just kind of like I'm like I just say like
You say Coke.
something else. Yeah, no, I just say I
Can I
just
have a
don't talk
Sprite
about that
Coke?
stuff. Yeah. Or I'll say like, beverages or something. Like I'll
Oh,
use some euphemism to not draw a line.
coward that
I've
you
been
are.
yes. Yeah, I've got some internalized anti-mid I definitely have a strong anti-Midwestern culture, like
Oh,
self-hatred for sure.
I
Yeah.
love the Midwest. That's why I'm moving to. That's a big part of the reason I want to move to Chicago and not like move out west or to New York or something. Like
Mhm.
I love the Midwest.
I guess this goes back to the Rust Belt thing. Like I identify more with like Rust Belt
That's fair.
than true Midwest, even though I have a mix of both. So that's probably why
Yeah,
that
people
happens.
were discoursing about where the Midwest is, and I was thinking how you've talked about that. Um, and I do. It's interesting because like East Ohio really kind of juts out far east,
Mhm.
just when you're looking
Mhm.
at it, and it is like, oh, actually, um, yeah, this is the map that I feel like makes the most sense to me. Um, and
Yeah.
and if you look at that area, like East Ohio really juts out, and it's like actually, if you were doing it like Ohio could probably be split down the middle, as like not
Yeah.
all of Ohio is actually Midwest, which is really
I would
interesting to me.
I would agree with that completely. Columbus feels like a Midwestern city, even in how it's laid out and operates, whereas Cleveland feels more like a Pittsburgh or something like that. You know,
Hmm.
Youngstown, Cleveland, Pittsburgh, all of those things are very Rust Belty. Even going down into like West Virginia and stuff. Um, yeah, it's different. Yeah, Ohio borders Pennsylvania.
Um,
Yeah, East Ohio and Pennsylvania are the same, basically. Even the topography is different. You have the Appalachian Mountains, you have the winding hills, all that stuff.
Skibidi Toilet, Riz, Bowser Fart, Pepino, Ohio. Yes. Just get that in there.
What?
Thank you, Waluigi. You know that Ohio is like part of that. Are you not familiar with that?
No.
I mean, okay, do you
What do
know?
these things all have to do with each other?
Oh my it's very much like Gen A shit where it's like I don't know, like it's like purposefully yeah.
That's their version of like lull random
Yes,
humor.
yes.
Okay.
It is purposefully and it's just a bunch of like random shit. So it's like
So is
Skibbity and
Pepino,
Wiz.
Ohio just like a phrase?
Pepino, I don't
Or is
know
it
if
a
I
thing?
haven't actually heard Pepino is from fuck, what is the game? Pizza Tower, which I feel like I don't actually usually hear Pepino in there. Ohio is like what the fuck does Ohio mean in this context? It's like bad, I think. It's like I think it means like bad. So it's like
That's fair.
yeah. It's like it's I feel like it came from that like can't have shit in Ohio
Oh,
or like
yeah.
what are those
Can't have shit
mean?
in Detroit. Yeah.
Right, right. Originally it's can't have shit in Detroit and then there was
Well, it was
like
originally Cincinnati, but Detroit got
really
more laughs. Yeah, which says something.
yeah.
Yeah, the original post was "Can't have shit in Cincinnati." My neighbors stole my stairs,
That's right.
my front stairs.
That's right. I think
Such a good
that's where
meme.
the Ohio came from, but I could be.
Yeah.
It's or there's those memes that are like normal day in Ohio, and it's like some monster, or like
Mhm.
the Rapture or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Casual live hi, and also yeah, it's definitely bagel egg and cheese sandwich. Thank you. But then you say
Never heard
I
that.
said pop and gradually started working soda in my vocab. Traitor, you're all traitors. Pop is the Deathbot. I'm a pop hater. No, nope.
Mm,
Get out of our chat. We're gonna ban all of you.
oh my
Any
god. No,
pop haters.
I'm offering, sovereignty to the
Sovereignty.
anti-pop collective. We're building something new atop the wreckage of this flawed culture.
Deathbot. I had a friend from Ireland in Detroit area recently and was explaining Coney Island restaurants and came to the realization that having a funny restaurant we call a Coney was very British style. Like I'm going to up to the chippy or some shit. That's so real.
Why?
I get
Why
it.
did they do it?
When you came here, was that the first time you'd been to a Coney? That seemed crazy to
I've no
me.
Yeah, I don't know Coney.
That seemed
I don't
crazy to
know
me
that
because
shit.
since you being from Ohio, I thought that was like
No,
a
we don't got that shit. No, we have, like, Denny's and Perkins,
because you guys have fucking
Waffle House.
you guys have Skyline.
No, I don't.
You don't claim
I
that.
don't.
You don't
That's
claim
Cinci
that.
that's Cincinnati. The
Oh,
first time I
okay.
had Skyline Chili was in the dorms at Ohio State when my Cincinnati-ass roommate made it, and it was awful then, and it's awful now, and Cincinnati's awful,
My
right?
spouse
And
would have
I
words
hate it.
about that. Well, maybe not. But yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, Skyline Chili is like a fast food place that does chili, but it's on spaghetti. Oh, Charles.
And it has cinnamon. It's chili with cinnamon
That's not weird.
on
Oh,
spaghetti.
I'm so
No,
glad
it's weird.
I'm
It tastes
so
sweet.
glad you reminded me of this because an insane thing happened. I'm glad we got to a really important point that I needed to make. Which is I had dinner with my parents and I told my dad about the sweet spaghetti with ketchup and yogurt. That's what it was, right?
Yeah.
And I told
Yeah,
my
from our
dad
birthday.
about this and he was like, "Yeah, that makes sense." And so he was like,
No, it
"Okay."
doesn't.
So I'm going to try and walk you through and try and remember all this.
He's trying to be contrarian.
Yeah. So, well, no, he wasn't. He was genuinely like, and this is a very autistic man who like has hyperfixated on food. Like he's not just talking shit. Like, he was like, well, sometimes when you like when you like when you have leftover spaghetti, you can put ketchup in it because it like loses a lot of the
The moisture.
moisture, and so you could put ketchup in it, and then it becomes sweeter because ketchup is kind of sweet, but it's still good. And then yeah, artistic bum, like maybe
Why
if
wouldn't you
it's
just put more tomato sauce on it?
Cause I don't know, it's too much, and it's also like leftovers. You're not gonna open a can of tomato sauce for leftovers.
Yeah,
And
why not?
so artistic bum said, yeah, maybe if it's like plain Greek yogurt, yeah, sour cream is a normal thing that you put in like beef dishes, like typically like more Mexican style stuff. But like
Mhm.
sour cream is not that weird, and you can substitute Greek yogurt for sour cream. Like that's really normal.
But you don't put sour cream on spaghetti.
You could, you not on it, but like
No,
when you're making it, you could use some for creaminess.
like, in as part of a base for a different
For the
sauce.
sauce, right? We're talking about like a meat sauce
That's
with.
still a stretch. That's still a huge stretch to me.
It makes perfect sense. It made perfect sense to my dad, and as he was explaining it, I was like, yeah, I get it, because like ketchup is a thing. People use ketchup in like a spaghetti meat sauce. Like that's not that weird. And if you put
Sure.
like and so he was also saying the sweet makes sense because you'll actually, he was like, you could put sugar in like a spaghetti sauce because sugar is like cuts acid, right? If you have something
Mhm.
that's really acidic,
Yeah.
if your tomatoes are crazy acidic, you might put some sugar in there to like offset that acid.
Listen, this would all be completely different for me if we were dealing with, like, a nice rotini or a fusilli or even an
That's so
elbow.
funny. That's so
Spaghetti is
funny.
so disgustingly textured to me. It's worms, it's slip
Yeah.
sliding around, it looks gross, it feels gross, it slurps around and flings sauce everywhere without any reservoirs, so it's already on thin fucking ice with me,
Yep.
you know?
My spouse
And I want
hates.
it to be dry also,
You
like,
want it to be
putting the dry
dry?
I want it to be not too wet and slurpy, so, like, if I'm having spaghetti, like, I'm gonna put so much shaky cheese on
You
top
gotta
of it to absorb
you
the
gotta dry
moisture,
the
because otherwise
wets.
I'm eating worms, so, like, putting any other disgusting shit on top of it is like, you're done. You were already on thin ice, but you're done.
Yep. See, this is I think this is a very good. This is why, this is why it's the discourse for us, because I love spaghetti. It's so slurpy. I want to slurp it.
Oh, that's a bad texture. That's a
It's a
bad texture.
good. It's a good. It's not
Ugh.
slurpy.
Oh my god, no. Oh. No, see, like, I'm a, like, crunchy, hard, hit me back food autistic, not a soft,
So
yielding,
it,
toothsome.
it is very funny. So we haven't looked in the hot takes prompts. If you don't know what we're talking about, we did a show where we did hot take prompts. A couple we did drunk driving and did hot take prompts that we had to answer while drunk and driving in a game. Um and people submitted prompts for that in the Piscord. We still haven't looked in that thread because we're going to come back to that and finish out the ones we didn't do eventually.
Mhm.
Um but but my spouse went in there and looked at the full prompt, and they said maybe I am something about like my, you know it probably is weird because the only people I've gotten to agree with me that it's not weird are my siblings who grew up eating it.
Mhm. Yeah.
But it made sense. It makes sense. It's the phrasing that is weird. And it's probably sweeter and like more creamy than I would be used
Oh,
to.
it's so foul. It's
You're
so
like
fucking foul.
nauseous.
There's this, infamous, like, Reddit, like, Ask Reddit or Reddit Am I the Asshole, where it's something about someone's wife, she makes this meal regularly for them that is, like, chili with lots of, cinnamon, which again is kind of normal but weird, and then cocoa powder also, which again is not totally unheard of, right? Because like, cocoa and spicy can go together, but
Yeah.
like, the way he described it, it became this, like, meaty, chocolatey, spicy sludge that they just eat with, like, crackers or, like, chips. They don't even put it over anything, and it has this really weird gunky texture, and she, like, tried to prepare it as a meal when they had, like, guests over, and people were, like, outraged and disgusted by it.
Yeah, that sounds pretty bad. In theory, I get what she's doing, but that sounds pretty
But
bad.
it's pushing to such an extreme degree because like, mole is great, right? Like,
Yeah.
you can mix, like, chocolatey, cocoa-y flavors and spiciness, um, You can put cinnamon is in some spicy foods.
We had
But
at the ice cream place that I worked at, we had spicy honey, which was a
mm,
great topping for some shit.
hot
Um,
honey is a big trend right now,
yeah.
and I'm all for it.
There's a
I
couple
love it on pizza. Yeah.
there's a couple Indian pizza places near me that I haven't gone to, but I really want to. That just shit just sounds amazing. Like fucking like yeah. Welcome to
Yeah.
Sleepy Eeper, sweet spicy chili.
Yes.
Yep. Are you do you put
Awful.
beans in would you put a do you are you a bean chili person? Would you put a
Well, I can't have beef, so I'm strictly
Oh,
bean
right.
chili, strictly vegan
Right.
chilies for me. So it's pretty chili used to scare me. I couldn't see what's going on in there. If I c I I used to have
Oh,
a really strict, like, orangey red foods were gross to me, and if I can't see what the fuck's going on in there,
you don't fuck with that.
I don't trust like that. Um, that's come around a lot, like, I love a curry or things like that, but,
Devin
chili is
needs
still,
a
like, watch out.
Devin needs a transparent liquid. Yeah, I'm imagining your food needs
Yeah.
to be like a slime from D&D where you could just see all the
No, no
little
slime,
no
no
slime.
viscosity, hard I need hard a series of hard cubes that keep themselves separate from everything else
I do
and don't ugh.
I do like shit separate. I that is one of my little like I don't it doesn't I don't hate it if it's not. Like I don't
Mm,
really care that much, but I do prefer it to be separate.
mhm. Yeah,
Clear chili. Clear
that
chili.
sounds Polish, that sounds like some fucking aspic shit.
Oh man. Oh,
Oh,
we got to get
god.
Jet Vector on here at some point
Yes.
and talk about
Yeah,
more about food.
yeah, he eats strawberry yogurt and Doritos together. So,
Yeah. We got
so
to
think about that.
we got to do an episode that's just what is that what was that what was it like foods with strange auras or powerful
Mhm,
auras or something. Got to do like an episode of that where we already did with the you're very good
mhm. Oh, like a ranking thing maybe or, like, tier list
yeah,
thing?
something like that.
Yeah.
Like we could eat a bunch of weird ones.
Oh, that would be fun.
That'd be fun. All right. Well, this was going to be the intro and this joke was going to be funnier when it was the intro, but you guys you guys hear about this? You guys hear about this? You guys hear about this? Um
What
so
you got for us?
I got a couple random things just cuz these were not even really intended to be like uh to talk about on the show, but this is just a couple random things I saw in the news. Um, Michigan woman kicked out after police discover she had been living inside grocery store sign for a year.
Yes.
Uh,
Fucking badass.
did you hear about this?
No, I did not. I love this shit. This is like the dream for me.
Yeah, this shit.
Inside the sign.
Yeah. So I think it was a family fare supermarket. It's in Michigan too. So hometown girl. Um.
Hometown Shiro.
Yep. Let's see. Yes, I think this is the original. This is the actual place. I think maybe.
Oh,
So yeah, almost like an attic, right?
right. That gives me the like, you seen Home Alone 2?
Yes.
Lost in New York?
Yeah.
When the pigeon woman, when they're in the roof of the symphony,
Yeah.
when she just has this warm, idyllic home base. I have been wanting that kind of free
Yes.
digs all my life. That is the fantasy.
Yeah.
So I love
Um.
this. And that one Natalie Portman movie where she lives in a Walmart when she's pregnant.
Oh, I never
You know
saw
about that
that.
movie?
No.
Yeah. Some weird, very Lifetime
Uh.
original kind of thing.
So quasi-moting, quasi-motoing
Yes.
is I misread it as quasi-moding, and I kind of like that. Just
That's
going
great.
quasi-mode. That's got to
Yeah,
be a thing.
a quasi-motor. Oh, that's whenever I'm well.
Quasi-motor, quasi-motor. um,
Yeah, we support quasi-moding here.
when contractors were working at a family fair grocery store in Midland, they unexpectedly found a woman, 34, living inside the rooftop sign. Contractors discovered an extension cord on the roof and traced it to the dwelling inside the family fair sign. Police called to investigate. We're like, oh my God, someone is living in that sign. Never seen anything like it. The woman who police nicknamed the, quote, rooftop ninja lived inside the store for about a year. Inside her dwelling, she had a mini desk, flooring, a pantry of food, and even a houseplant. She made
Oh
it
my
a
God.
home.
This is literally where I blog from. Like,
Yes. Oh,
this is the shit. Oh my God. There was this American Life story years ago about this guy who lived in one of the Chicago bridges,
oh
one of the
wow.
raising bridges, and he had an extension cord running in there, and he had to, like, crawl into some little hole, and he had a mattress in there, he had a TV,
God.
he had
So
all
sick.
kinds of stuff, and he was, like, working in an ad agency doing this, just, like,
Yeah.
you know, not having to pay rent. I
There's a
love
great
it.
99% Invisible episode. I believe it might be adapted from like an article or a book or something about. I'm trying to remember the specifics. I think that there was a mall that was being built near some guy's house. So it was like they had like a house with a bunch with like some dudes in it, and this mall was being built nearby. To the point where they were when they walked home, they would watch it. So they were watching it go up,
Mhm.
and as they watched it go up, and then eventually went in the mall, they were like, "There's a place that doesn't seem to have anything in it." Like just
I saw this! I saw
yeah,
this shit, yes.
just based on like the floor plan and what they saw from construction, they were like, there's like a whole area that seems to be not anything. So they found a way in and they lived there for a long time, like at least a year. I don't remember how long.
Mm. Yeah, I remember that they had to have some, like, ladder, and I think they even had, like, a party in there at one point, where,
Yeah,
like, multiple friends would use it if they needed it for stuff.
yeah, that sounds right. It was a really long time since I've seen it, but yeah, it was great. But yeah,
God.
this is a similar an add to the annals of this, which basically I guess I have on the show, so we can be like, if you if you see a situation like this,
Don't snitch.
don't snitch and get in on it. Like,
Yeah.
um, but shockingly, officers told the woman that she needed to find somewhere else to live. She was trespassed from the business. Um, uh, yeah, they believe she has a vehicle. But Family Fair declined to press criminal charges. The store police said the store agreed to work with the woman to get her furniture down and back to her,
Okay, good.
which is
Great.
great. So it was like a great, my first thought is this woman's definitely white. Like that.
Yeah, that sounds definitely
This is a
the
white
case.
woman. There's no way.
Absolutely. It's literally pregnant Natalie Portman up there.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it ended well, which is great. So Michigan win. Um,
Yes. Handstand on a curve says, "Trespassing, the only valid kind of passing." Cheers.
that's really
Cheers to
good.
that.
That's
The only kind of
really
stealth
good.
that's worth aspiring to is passing the stealth check when you're living in a store sign.
That's really good. Oh.
I've honestly no, so, Maddie, I would assume just from conversations we've had about our youth that you were also like a fuck around in a Kmart type of girly as a teen,
Shockingly, no.
a loiterer.
I
No?
no. I mean, well, oh, when you say loiter, do you mean like less so? What? Okay, so I in my teens, I had really probably too good of access to houses where the parents didn't give a shit. So
Oh.
So we had like and then later we had older friends that had apartments. So there was like, so my little
Okay.
clique of stoners like was a little multi-generational. So we knew people that were like seniors when we were like juniors. And so they moved out at 18 and got apartments. So towards like senior year, um yeah, and yeah, as Casual Live is my friend from back in the day. So yeah, we did a lot of wandering out around outside. It was the Ann Arbor area has a lot of beautiful forests and shit, and the Arb and all that shit. So we had lots of
Mm,
places to go. Um, uh, but so yeah, I did less loitering than you would think, and even
right.
less, like urban exploring, which is a shame because I was always super interested in that, and I'm still super
Mm,
interested in that. Um,
yeah,
but yeah,
urbex. Yeah, yeah. My friend group, it was really like Gavin just said. My friends and I used to do scavenger hunts in CVS, just come up with a category and compete to find the best item. We would spend
that's fun.
like we would walk around a lot. We didn't really have access to other spaces, so it was a lot of. I mean, we would like break and enter into churches and like junkyards and all kinds of weird just stuff, graveyards and stuff,
Yeah,
people's backyards that we didn't know and things like that, but we would also spend you just had to find a way to occupy your mind for hours
right,
in a Walgreens or in a Kmart,
right.
and so it would be a lot of, like, sitting in the furniture section, and we would just openly steal, just, like, open a thing of candy and just eat it there and, like, read magazines and, like, until they kicked us out. Um, yeah, lots of I mean, we knew people that did a 24-hour Perkins-a-thon. I think I've probably talked about that before, but the dream was always, could I find a place to hide until after security closed the place down
Yeah.
and spend the night. That was such
Again, Home
a
Alone
dream.
2.
Mhm.
Hide out in the candy in the toy store until
Yes.
you just like
That's
wanted to live Home Alone 2 was just your dream.
literally, I that yeah, it's true. I just was on my Kevin McAllister shit.
You just wanted to move to the big city and live your fucking Home Alone 2 dreams.
Yep, yes. That's yeah, that has always been just the fantasy for me. So it's so much harder to do now than back
Yeah.
then. Like, surveillance technology was just not where it is, and the surveillance state and police state wasn't there in the same way. So, it's like we had this beautiful time of loitering.
Yeah.
Again, white kids
Right.
had a much easier time doing it than anybody else.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, I
and
I very viscerally remember the difference being in any store as a teen when it was just me and white friends versus just me and like a black person. Like, just
Mhm.
it's like, oh yeah, this is a different experience.
Yeah, 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 like, when you're a teen and you look kind of alternative, they might still be like, "Oh, you little
Yep.
fuckheads," but you're fine. You're gonna be fine, you know?
Yep.
You might not be able to get away with as much shit, but
Yep.
you're not getting the retaliation. But, yeah, this is just, like, the shit that, like, when you talk about, like, anarchy as a thing you do, like,
Yeah.
that we create that world with our choices, like, this is, like, how skaters use public spaces in the ways that they weren't designed for and thereby, like, reclaim ownership over them.
Yep.
This stuff and, like, squatting in public places and the encampments, it's all connected. This
Yep.
is all it's always a W if you do this shit
Yep.
for however long you can get away with it.
Yep. So one more story from the news from the
Aw, oh my god.
um
Unhappy with you.
don't put your finger in a Cybertruck.
Oh my god.
This is just for you,
Cybertruck
Devin.
news.
This is just for you. Um. So yeah. Well, let's watch. Okay, I got a trigger warning this for scary. There's no gore. Uh.
But if you imagine a hand in the trunk, it would be gory.
Yeah, so this fucking guy, he's like, and this is a Cybertruck stand because everyone that owns them are, um, but he tested it.
Oh, are you playing
Oh
it right
wait,
now?
oh I'm sorry,
It's not sharing. Yeah.
I'm very sorry, I forgot.
Oh, is that a banana? Okay.
Yeah, here's a cucumber.
Oh my god. So when it finds resistance, it increases the pressure instead of stopping, is the
Yes,
mechanism, right?
that is what was revealed after this, because he tried. So he tried his arm.
Oh my god. Oh no, don't do it, man.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm gonna show. Yeah, because he did. Then he did his hand. So
So
yeah, I'm not even gonna show it. It's not gory or anything. It doesn't cut it off, but um, I'll show the aftermath.
oh, that shit hurted. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, that was really close to breaking skin, it looks like. That is not good. So was this guy, because I have not watched this video, I heard all about it, but I haven't watched it. Is this guy one of those people who's like, "I still love you, Tesla,
Oh,
but you gotta fix this, because 'cause I'm gonna die."
I
One of those kind of videos?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there was another guy who did this, who broke his finger. Um, and yeah, so he after some testing, Tesla actually told me I did the test wrong. We learned that it had an algorithm that increases pressure over time. I put my arm, then hand, then finger. According to the algorithm, it thinks that I wanted the frunk closed. Perhaps a big bag was in the way. Using this information, that means it closed on my finger harder than my hand and way harder than my arm. Which is insane, because if a bag is in the way, why would you want the fucking bag to get crushed? It's
No. It would get
absolutely
stuck or broken,
it's
like
absolute madness. And yeah, I mean, this is a guy that loves Elon, and they're all
Mhm.
like this.
I was just thinking the other day, like, man, I haven't watched any Tesla accident videos for fun recently, but like, it's been such a genre since they started even existing. Like, even the Tesla fanboys
Yeah.
in the content they produce about it, it's like, oh, this thing needs to get updated. It thinks it's supposed to drive into a pedestrian to get them out of the way, you know, it thinks we're supposed to go off the cliff, and I'm drowning in the water.
It's
Like, the
it's
amount of cognitive distortion they have to do to justify what it's doing is so transparent and sad.
yeah, it is unfathomable that this is just the way that it is, and everybody still loves him. They're all signing up to kill their families. Like, the craziest one that I've heard is that my spouse told me about, from seeing on the Tesla. They saw this on the Tesla website, and this is like maybe less dangerous, but just more like, and it was that the yeah, you can probably actually see it. So I guess they were saying that there's like a shelf. So I guess it must have been like a pretty, right, because like this has a picture of the Cybertruck.
Mhm.
So I get,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So you can see these headlights down here, right?
They're
Um,
so small.
yeah, and there's this shelf right under it. And so people were saying that somebody was like, "Yeah, I went on this road trip and it was snowy, and the snow was building up over the fucking headlights."
Yes,
And
I
so
saw this.
and so he would have to like stop every 20 minutes and brush it off. And people were like, "That sounds really annoying." And he was like, "Well, it's not that hard. I just had to stop every 20
Stop every
minutes.
20 minutes. It's
It's
pretty
not a
quick once you do that. Yeah.
it's not a big deal."
I mean, when you spend this much money on such a stupid item, the cognitive pressure to, like, make yourself still be satisfied with the choice is so heavy,
Yeah.
and Yeah, it's this sunk costs cult thing that happens. It's really sad.
Like, what if you're on the highway and you can't stop, bro? Yeah, absolutely. Um,
Yeah, it's pure copium, you're right. And the repairs are more expensive than for almost any other car,
oh my
too.
god! So I did pullover prevention for a while, which is where we would replace people's um, headlights and backup lights for free because lights are super cheap and it's usually pretty easy to replace bulbs. So we would just buy a bunch of them and then replace them for free for people so that they wouldn't get pulled over because you can get in most places you can still get pulled over and then if they pull you over for a headlight violation then they can like say they smelled weed and then shoot you. Like I think that was actually why it started was because there was I think it was that one where that cop thought she reached for her taser and actually reached for
Was
her
this Sandra
gun.
Bland?
I
Or
think that sounds right.
yeah.
um
Wait, no, she was still alive when she was booked, so that wasn't Sandra Bland.
that may have been it. But I'm forgetting. Somebody got pulled over for a headlight or tail light violation and then got shot. But we were joking when I was doing that. They were joking about the fucking not even the Cybertruck, like the Model 3 or whatever. Like you have to take the whole fucking rear bumper off to replace the fucking tail light.
Mhm. Oh my god. Yeah, it's so inefficient. Um, every single Tesla cam accident that I watch, it's always like, even if it was a small scratch, it's like, "This cost $5,000," or like, "This mirror
Yeah.
got knocked off." Insurance had to total the car because repairing it would cost so much money, you might as well just get a new sedan or something.
Yep.
Like,
Appa-
and that's not, eco-friendly if you have to like, torch the whole car
yeah.
every time it gets a dent.
It's still very funny to me that Elon, like Tesla's thing is like, yeah, we do electric cars for the environment, and while Elon Musk is like, sharing like race science, like race crime statistic, like fucked up race crime statistics, like
Mhm.
badly, you know what I mean, like. And, and
Right.
and posting under it like interesting or wow or
Really makes you think.
concerning.
Yeah.
Like
Well, yeah.
it really does get to the way that like the liberal zeitgeist and the conservative zeitgeist are all just merging into one. It's all the same, you know, law and order
Mhm.
party now.
Yep, yep, these things are, like, even more indistinguishable from each other than they were a
Yep.
couple of years ago. Nausicaa in the Valley said, "I think the only Cybertruck recall they've done so far is for the defective acceleration
Yep.
pedal, which gets stuck down and just keeps accelerating. But otherwise, they're letting these things be hazards on the streets." Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's the only one they've, like, had to do so far, which was still a massive recall. That's like
Yeah.
that's like every Cybertruck,
Which
like,
is only
has
like
that problem.
3,000, which was really funny. Like it was like
Yeah.
3,500 or something. But yeah, like basically there was just like an aesthetic plate on top of all of the pedals, and the accelerator one would like when you would like push it down, and then it would because of the force of your foot pushing down on it, it would continue to slide forward, and then there was like a panel gap again because these cars are shit and the panel gaps are so fucking huge. So on the inside there's two panels, and that plate that again, which is just a like a cover that would just for aesthetics would fucking slide off because it was like not like actually screwed on there. It's just like
Mhm.
tabs or some shit and get stuck in that panel gap, and then you can't like it wouldn't bounce back to stop accelerating.
Right.
So the
Yeah,
the
so you had to hit
fix
the brake to stop driving.
right, and the fucking fix was they had people bring him to the dealership and they just fucking took a drill and drilled a fucking drilled a fucking hole and put a screw in it so it would stay.
Oh my god. Great work, everyone.
Yeah.
Oh. Hey Zelda says, my understanding is their business model relies on selling their carbon credits to companies that don't have all electric fleets, which is why consumers aren't the priority.
That
And
makes sense.
this is why, by the way, like reformist policies like carbon exchanges
Yeah.
don't do anything. You're just buying literally like a symbolic indulgence for your own carbon emissions rather than reducing net carbon emissions at all. So it
Right.
becomes just another commodity to trade and invest in and speculate on,
Right.
which leads to more damage to the environment, not less.
Yeah, and not only that, not only are you like not like allowing these companies to like still do the fucking carbon emitting, but then it's like, electric cars still, I mean, they take a fuckload of lithium and they're fucking
Mhm.
all mined by child slaves in the fucking Congo and shit, and now there's all that shit. And it's like you're just
Mhm.
yeah. Yeah, it's all bad.
Yeah. Shit's fucked.
Everybody knows shit's fucked.
We need that bumper.
We really do. Now that I've been feeling a lot better. So now I need to start getting on top of this shit.
Mhm. Oh, artistic bum. The Taser mix-up, quote unquote, was in Minnesota in 2021. Victim was 20-year-old father Dante Wright.
Yeah, that
Thank you.
sounds right.
Thank you for clarifying that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, there he is. Our king.
King. All right.
Love that person.
So that's all that was in the news. In the news, we should have a bumper for that too.
News.
I
Yeah.
got to get my chin bigger and go Jay Leno mode.
Oh my god. Yes.
um
Get you a saxophone.
yeah. um but yeah, you have a piece now that I'm very excited about. And that, speaking of bumpers, this is definitely a thing we need a bumper for because I want this more, which is a scientific article that we're going to talk
Yes.
about.
Yes, and it's a rare case of one, a scientific article that is readable and good and has good methods and encouraging also results. So this is not a sharticle,
That's great.
everybody. This is something that landed in my inbox because of like some reviewing that I do for some publications, and I was like, "Whoa, this shit actually doesn't blow," um, and is accessible to the public. So let me
Oh,
pull it up. We
yeah,
didn't do a screen share
yeah, I just
thing.
realized that. We can do that now.
Yeah.
Just
Okay.
give us 1 second.
Okay. So we'll just get that pulled up, and in the meantime, I'll post the link chat.
Sorry.
It's a. I'm sorry.
No, it's okay. You just were muted for a second. You're good now.
Okay, cool. This is an article in the journal Social, Psychological, and Personality Science, PSP or SPPS. And it is all about chronic cannabis use, emotional, motivational, and self regulatory effects of frequently getting high. And we'll take a look at that in a second here.
Yeah, so I didn't read this, so I'm going in blind.
Yeah.
So what's the deal? What's the deal with this?
What's the deal? So this is a.
What's the deal with smoking weed all the time?
Yeah. Hold on a second here. So this is a pretty good article to kind of not like read every bit, obviously, but because it's actually accessibly written and like has it's like actually a well put together, accessible journal article. We can kind of work our way through it. Um, and this article is addressing a big gap in a lot of the research. Even though weed is legal in a lot of the U.S., it has really well documented medicinal effects for a lot of people. Not for everybody. It's not like, oh, it's a kind herb from the ground. It can't ever hurt you, right? Like that's
Yeah.
not true. But it's something where the science is generally like very supportive of it, and yet researchers, when they look at the effects of weed, they still often assume that it must be if it's being used recreationally, that must mean it's bad. Like that you can't do it too much if you're doing it not because you have to, right?
Right.
Um, So I'll just read the abstract real quick to give us an overview. Approximately 200 million people consume cannabis annually, with a significant proportion of them using it chronically. Using experience sampling, which we'll go into what that is, we describe the effects of chronically getting high on emotions, motivation, effort, and self regulation in everyday life. So, those are their outcome variables, people's mood, how motivated they are, and they look at a couple different forms of motivation. Um, one of them is really interesting. It's like the motivation of like just being afraid of people being mad at you is one type they look at. Uh-huh. How much effort, how much cognitive effort people put into a task. So they give people the option to participate in a really easy number sorting task or when they're high, or a much harder one. And the harder one comes with more rewards. And then self regulation, which again we'll get into. We queried chronic users 5 times per day over 7 days. So this is not in a laboratory. This is checking in with people throughout their daily life, which is great, to assess immediate effects of getting high and longer term between person effects. So comparing how somebody functions when they're high compared to when they're not high. So what we would call like within person or within subject comparisons, but then also comparing, the people who get high 5 times a week to the people who get high like 3 or 4 times a day, and things like
Right.
that. So this is looking at heavy users and even drawing comparisons between them. Um, Getting high was associated with more positive emotions and fewer negative emotions. Contrary to stereotypes, we observed minimal effects on motivation or objective effort willingness. So people who were high, they were not less motivated, and they were just as willing as usual for them to take on a cognitively challenging task. Um, However, getting high was associated with lower scores on facets of conscientiousness, which we'll get into what that is. Surprisingly, there was no evidence of a weed hangover.
That's
uh,
surprising to researchers. That's so interesting.
yeah,
I
yeah,
feel like that's
they
the
they
first thing you learn when you're talking about weed to somebody that doesn't know anything about weed. That's like the first thing that you tell them. Like
mhm,
that's so
that there is no
shocking.
hangover.
Yeah, that's so shocking that I guess they like researchers were assuming that that's like a that was a or they just didn't know at all, but that they were assuming that's like a myth or something.
Yeah, yeah, well, I mean, it really speaks to how speaking from experience, like, when you hang out with people doing psychological research, they are such maybe normies isn't even the real word for it because normies smoke weed. People smoke weed. That's a very normal in America experience. They're like these very straight-laced people, and being in the academy almost keeps you from having life experiences in a lot of ways. So,
Right.
like, they can be functionally a lot more conservative than the average person. Even though, like, there's this stereotype of, like, "Oh, academia, everybody's liberal," you
Right.
know? Even if they're, like, Democrat liberals, they're very
Right.
traditionalist in a lot of ways,
Yeah.
if that makes any sense. Relative to less frequent users, very frequent users exhibited more negative emotions dispositionally. So, but they were more motivated. So, what this means is if you're looking at people who, these are all heavy users in this study by design, but there are people who use weed in this study multiple times a week. And then there are people who use weed multiple times per day. So, like people who are dosing a lot. And what they found was that people who use weed multiple times per day, they have a baseline of more negative emotions. So it's not because of the weed, right? It um, is suggesting that people who use weed that often, they're probably self-medicating for like depression or anxiety, and that's why they're using it so much,
Mm,
or something like that. But they also were at baseline more motivated people.
interesting.
So yeah, so the like whatever dirtbag stoner stereotype, even though we stand fucking dirtbag stoners also here,
Yeah.
in case it's not already clear. But but that just was completely contrary to the evidence, which is like people who use weed a lot, it's often because they are already probably too motivated, too stressed out, and are using
Interesting.
it to chill out. Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. And this is self-report. The heavy users reported less self-control and willpower, but we don't actually see it in their behavior in this study. Like they, again, we're pretty likely to do the high cognitive load task, the like challenging task.
Interesting.
So yeah. So that's the overview. There's a lot of different.
Introduction. People like to get high. Hell yes.
Hell
This is a
yeah,
good
brother.
fucking study. Hell yeah,
Yeah.
brother.
You can see the next heading is the chronic.
This is so good.
Yes, these writers, this is the best written journal article I have read in a long time, like since Phil Tetlock was still writing stuff. Um,
Did you ever
like
see
it's
that article that was my favorite that I've ever seen? And I didn't read through it. I just saw this because people were sharing it because of the title. Was like, what was it? Autistic. This paper will be mad if you don't, or this paper will be sad
if
if
you
you
don't
don't.
read it.
Yeah, autistic anthropomorphization in like autistic people or something like that. So brutal
Mhm.
but hilarious.
Yes. I thought that was such a cute title. I love a good journal title that makes you actually remember what it is.
Yeah,
My favorite.
what was the title of this one again? I think
This one
it's
is pretty straightforward. Chronic cannabis use in everyday life,
yeah.
emotional, motivational, and self-regulatory effects. One of my favorites though is "You Give Me the Chills: Embodied Reactions to Inappropriate Amounts of Behavioral Mimicry," which found
Wow.
that like if somebody mirrors your posture and mannerisms too much, either to a degree that's just weird for the situation or weird for your relationship, it makes people physically feel colder,
Wow. That's
which is
interesting.
so crazy. Yeah. Um, so yeah, we love a fun title. Let's actually, before we dive into the findings, since people are awesomely sharing their own use cases of how they use weed, what they find. Some people
Yeah.
say it depends on the strain. Maybe we could talk about that a little bit. Like, like Maddie, what are your experiences with some of this stuff, these variables and weed, and then I can talk about mine. And
Yeah, so I have um my my experience with weed is that in general is that I was a very heavy user. I guess less so. It was not usually multiple times a day. I mean, it was at
Mhm,
times, but it was more like multiple times a week than like a bunch of times a day. I was always somebody that like I had a lot of stoner friends, but I like just got weed from them. So I kind of mostly social smoke, but we hung out enough that that was most of the time. Sometimes I'd have it by myself, but I didn't have it very often. And this was from like I don't know, like 14 to like 18. And then as I started to realize I was trans and started transitioning, I think that unlocked some like repressed shit. And I
mhm.
basically I started to get really, really anxious every time I smoked. Um, and so I stopped uh, almost completely altogether for about 10 years. And just recently, in the past couple years, I've like started to smoke, a little bit more. Um, so it's hard for me to like have good, like solid feelings about like how I react to weed because I'm still like re-exploring it. Um, I do. There are some weird things for me specifically, and I was curious if you knew. I meant to ask you about this, just like personally, because I thought this was weird. I have like, um, I guess we were kind of talking about this. Like, I have paradoxical reactions to marijuana in
Mhm.
some ways. Like, um, if I'm high, I can't sleep, and I lose my appetite.
Yeah.
And this is not like based on strains because this was always true back in the day when I smoked all the fucking time. I just am not hungry. Like literally, I will if I smoke when I'm hungry, I'll stop being hungry, and then and like trying to get to sleep when I'm high is like trying to get to sleep on like a fucking stimulant. So I think this is
Mhm.
related to, I do have paradoxical reactions to some medications in general. Like there was an antipsychotic. I think it was oh God, what is it? It's like one they will give. It's like an antipsychotic, anti-anxiety that they'll give people to calm down, like in the hospital. Uh,
Mhm.
and I got, it made me angry, which is very weird for me. Like I'm not an angry person. It made me like aggressive, which was really
Mm.
weird. So I think I
Yeah.
have some paradoxical relationships to like side effects from drugs in general. Um, but
Yeah.
some of the stuff that they're talking about in here, I have a hard time like knowing what I'm like because it's been so long since I've smoked like this.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah, so it's definitely really common in ADHDers for have to have, like, paradoxical drug effects, though it definitely seems like some of what you're describing is more rare or, like, certainly a lot of people have the caffeine thing where
Right.
caffeine makes them tired, but
Yeah.
some of those that you're describing are probably more rare, but I think
Caff-
are in the mix.
Caffeine and stimulant stuff, like I feel like I don't have a good bead on what it does. Like it doesn't feel, I did do coke once, and I
Mhm.
remember viscerally remember because I had an Adderall prescription before that, or when that happened, and I viscerally remember being like, "Oh, this is just like Adderall." Like I remember being like, "This is not like, I don't feel like I'm going to I feel fine. Like this is nice,
Mhm.
but it's not like it's fine." um and caffeine, I feel like, I don't know, it can go either way for me. Um
Mm,
so
yeah. Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, that is why using any upper as a stimulant if you need to is fucking valid as fuck. If you Adderall shortage, I mean, I'm not saying go seek out cocaine if you can't find Adderall if you don't want to, but let's
yeah.
not stigmatize people who use meth and etcetera, 'cause
Yeah.
stimulants are is stimulants and people use them for a variety of reasons. But,
Unfortunately, yeah, unfortunately with street drugs like that, you just have to be so, you can't know
you
what's in
gotta
it.
test.
um
Yeah.
and even tests are like, have to test for specific things, so it's like if you didn't test for the right thing, it could be, so it's like definitely like there's danger there, but again, that doesn't mean
Mhm.
that we
That it's
should,
bad to do, yeah.
right, we should definitely like, yeah, that's like, get rid of that stigma. It makes sense, people are doing what they need to do. Like,
Right. Yeah. As Malabanshee said, cocaine is also way harder to dose for function, so just start small.
yeah.
Good to know. Yeah, and with fentanyl and stuff going around, the problem, it all comes back to informed consent. If people had the ability
Right.
to safely know what they're taking and what they're getting into, all this stuff would be, all things being equal, decide what works for you and
Right.
so on.
Yeah.
Um, but, yeah, for me, weed has going into some of these effects, I don't really get a positive mood boost from it. If anything, sometimes I can ruminate more, and be more in touch with my emotions, which sucks. Don't I don't
That's
wanna do
fascinating.
that. Yeah.
That's fascinating.
Weed in terms of the studies doesn't go into this, but, like, pain, it's so fascinating to me that weed is useful for pain for a lot of people because the second I'm, like, high, I can feel every little ache in my body and all of these weird sensations that I can't ever normally feel,
Yeah.
and I guess it's good because then I'm, like, massaging my shoulders and, adjusting things, but it's like, "Oh, I'm in so much more pain in a way." Like, I'm so much more aware of everything, like, I feel like I can feel the shit moving through my body and everything, like, in the
Yep.
muscles. It's I can see why it's beneficial, and some people really like, lifting weights high because they can feel and control the muscles better, but it's also kind of a lot sometimes.
Yeah.
Um, I would say I have never had a thought of trying to, like, write while high. I don't think I could do that. I think there's a lot of tasks, like, that are really cognitively demanding like that I would not trust myself to do high because I just feel too, like, "Do I sound insane right now?" Like, that self-doubting kinda thing.
Yeah.
But reading, especially, like, dense stuff high, is so goated. Like, I love reading, like,
Interesting.
communist theory high, or, like, history books. Like, I can just focus on it so much better
Interesting.
and not have. Yeah, and not have, like, urgency to, like, get through it or skim it, like, I can really digest it. Um, so, I'd be at the club on Anarchist Library, fucking zooted, reading shit, and it's great.
I
So
I feel like I should try that. I've never tried. I used to be a huge reader, and now it's really really hard to like. I'll do audiobooks, but that's you have to have the right thing while you're doing an audiobook. Um, but yeah. The Trans Peaks is agreeing with the body sensation. I absolutely agree that is a thing that I've had happen. Like that's like a big thing when it's like a bad trip can start that way for
mm,
sure. Like I
mm,
very much think like weed is usually really chill, but some of the most intensely bad experiences I've had with drugs, and I've not done a ton of any drugs, but I've tried a decent amount of different stuff when I was in high school. And the worst experience I've had was with weed. Like
oh, yeah.
that shit can be intense. Um, but I also do want to voice what some of the people are saying in the chat of that strain does really make a difference.
Yeah.
And I think that is I would like it's hard when because this is all self-regulation, so it's like I mean I guess you could have supplied every patient with weed for as much weed as they wanted for the whole study, um
Yeah, and control the strain, yeah.
right, um but obviously they don't go into that. um
Mhm. And they kinda also want there's a trade-off between always between, like, scientific control and, like,
right,
real world validity.
right,
So, that's one of the strengths of this study is this is how these people actually smoke every day.
right.
So, yeah,
Yeah, it's better that they
definitely.
did it that way probably rather than but yeah, so I do wonder if that is a part of cuz specifically what I've heard a lot with strains is that there's like the different it's like body high or like head high, right? um oh hey
Mhm.
Jet.
Hey, Jet.
Welcome.
We talked about weed and you, appeared. Interesting. Interesting.
We're
Yeah, so
we were just talking
sorry.
about weird food earlier, so
Yeah, we talked about your
and how you
Dorito
should
crimes.
yeah, and how you should come on and talk about your food crimes, and we could do food
Yes.
crimes together. But anyway,
Yeah, we should do that. Yeah, so the mnemonic is indica, couch.
thank you. I always forget them. Chat,
Yes.
is this real? Is this real? Chat, is this
Yes.
real?
This chat is this real? I mean, this is definitely my experience. Indica is like the sleepier, slower one. I actually don't always like it because it can feel like you're couch locked, like you can't get up or like
Yeah.
depressed.
Such a good word, by the way. Like, there are some good words that come. Like, we were just talking earlier about, like, they're different, some words you need. And, couch lock is, like, such a good one. Not just for being
Yeah.
that kind of high, but like you
Yeah.
immediately,
It's
you hear couch lock and you're like, yep, I know what that means.
I know exactly what's happening. I'm rotating spiders in my mind and I can't go to the bathroom.
Oh,
Like
no. That's awful. That's
it's
awful.
awful. And that's what happens everybody wants to start with edibles.
Yes.
Don't start with edibles. It takes a while to kick in. It lasts for a long time. I truly think if you have access to it, start with a drink.
Yes.
A drink or a tincture that you can hold under your tongue because it hits sooner than an edible, but you're not smoking. It's much more of a body buzz. I swear by it. Sativa is the more active strain, more associated with, like, being creative and being social, but it can feel for some like more of an upper, which means some people get panic attacks. So, starting with a hybrid, I think, is probably the way to go for most people, a blend of both, uh, in, like, a drink or a tea or something like that.
That one dog boy, my wife has been using weed daily for years to cope with crippling BPD, ADHD, etc. It evens her out and makes it easier for her to cope with her mood swings. Yeah, I definitely,
That's dope.
I feel like from my own anecdotal data, I feel like, um, I know there are a lot of people that like I know that use it for like people with BPD that use it a lot that find that it really helps even things out, which is an interesting thing that I feel like doesn't get talked about. Um,
Mhm. Yeah.
and
Yeah,
I'm curious for more stories like that, as people are already sharing, like how do people use weed themselves and that kind of stuff.
yeah, and that is a thing that's kind of, and when we delve further into this article, they'll talk about really how you'd think there's a lot of science on weed out there. There actually really isn't, especially
Yeah.
that isn't from the assuming you're drug abusers
Yeah.
frame. And so we don't know a lot about anything more granular than that, especially like how is it different for neurodivergent people? You know, it's recommended sometimes as a or listed as a treatment, quote unquote, for autism. Because if you get your kid high, they're going to have fewer meltdowns. Cool.
Yeah. Ben, my late brother Ben, who was, you know, diagnosed as autistic. I think he was autistic, but he was
Yeah.
nonverbal, so it's hard to know.
High support needs. Yeah.
Yep, he we used CBD butter for him, and that did seem to, or no, not butter. I think we actually ended up, there was like I think tinctures is where they ended up, and that,
Mm,
I guess, was helpful for him, and he had a lot of uh, self harm kind of stuff, or
mhm. Yeah. Yeah, so there is some evidence here and there, especially in terms of the, like, because unfortunately, high support needs people are so disenfranchised that
right,
usually all we know is just what do we see from the outside
right,
and things like that, but it definitely does seem to be the case that there are some differences in how autistic people experience this stuff. Um, I know that for me, it it definitely I think I just do so much not even masking as an intentional performance, but just complete, like, detachment and repression from my body and stuff, that I am way more intuitive when I'm high. We've talked about this before. I'm way more, like, autistic, like, stimming feels more fun. Our friend of the show, Jersey Noah, actually did a thesis on this. He did
oh wow,
a master's thesis on, um, autistic people using weed, to help them exercise and stim because they just feel more comfortable in their bodies and how that's like a pathway to just helping people unmask and helping people if they wanna be more physically active and they don't feel comfortable doing that because of, like, autistic motor stuff, like, that can help. So, yeah, weed forcing the mask off, exactly. So, like, in terms of motivation, mood, self-regulation, it's kind of hard to talk about here because it's like, well, now suddenly I can feel that this blanket feels really good and I'm rubbing around in it, or I can feel that this thing sucks to do and I'm not gonna do it anymore, like,
yeah, that's really
so that might
interesting.
look yeah, so it might look like less motivation in the productivity sense, which it's like, thank God, for once, you care about something else. You know, you can attend to a feeling. Um,
Yeah, Liv says, I definitely feel less anxious about looking or being weird when I'm on a substance, which allows me to unmask easier, which is nice.
mm,
Um, although I think
yeah,
there is a stereotype, and for the right, for real reasons, of the opposite too. Like I definitely can't imagine going, like there's the story of like going out, like being high and going to this corner store, and it's like there's a paranoia of, I think there's, that's so embedded in the paranoia of people knowing you're high because it is illegal,
mhm,
like even though it's not illegal anymore, it's still like not super, I don't know, there's people are still have their hangups about it, so it's hard to like separate those out of like, well, if it was just super easily, like super publicly acceptable to be high in a place, would you actually be as anxious about it? um
right,
but I definitely do feel like there's that anxiety, and again, there's this the strain stuff too, like that it could be a strain thing too, but it is definitely like, I feel like a million eyes are on me. Like I could imagine, like
mhm.
I haven't gone out in public high since, because I'm afraid to. Like that just
Yeah,
seems like a lot.
I've also found it takes a long time to just get used to being high, to be able to be more
Yeah,
functional. Like, way more than alcohol, where I feel like you have 1 or 2 times where you make a fool of yourself, and then you're like, "Okay, I recognize now how drunk I am or not, I can
yeah,
regulate it."
yeah,
Whereas I feel like for me, for, like, the first year or so that I started getting high pretty regularly, I was like, "Oh my god, I can't talk to anybody, don't look at me, this is fucked up," like, you know?
yeah.
And now it's like, Oh, I definitely sound a little stupider, but, like, I sound a little bit more normal to most people, like, in that I'm not, like, hyper analyzing everything I say, like, I'm just vibing, and that's good. That's fine, you know, like, it's okay if I seem spacey or whatever.
Yeah.
Um, Most people have other things on their mind too. It's not because 'cause they're dumb, it's just because 'cause they're fucking chilling. Most people are fucking chilling.
Most people are fucking chilling. That's fucking good.
That's fine. Um, and so it can make socializing easier, even though at first it made it harder. Again, very paradoxical stuff.
Um, this is kind of random, but one very fucking fascinating thing that I've that has happened as I'm getting back into weed is that when I notice when I do something high for the first time,
Mm,
so or have an experience that is new. So like the biggest thing is like fucking commercials, right? Like
mm.
so this is so fucking but I mean like modern commercials that come up on my fucking YouTube are so fucking weird and it's this very strange thing where like it's kind of hard to describe but like my mental it's like suddenly I'm 20 again.
Mhm.
Like suddenly I'm
Interesting.
18 like back when I was smoking weed and I have this like I'm like seeing the world as if I'm like there's a different person that gets high that hasn't been that is like not been there for the
Oh,
who's been then like
state-dependent memory.
yeah I guess that I
Yeah.
is that makes sense that's uh, I've never heard that phrase before but that makes sense like it's very much like this weird like I feel like I'm getting in touch with the person I was when I stopped smoking weed like which is a
Yeah.
fucking why it's like it's a wild feeling it's very subtle like I feel like that's like it's so wild but it's very subtle but it's still like
Wow, that's
yeah
cool. That's interesting.
yeah
Yeah, because there's this whole state-dependent memory finding where it's like, if you learn something while you're drunk, you'll remember it easier while you're drunk. I'm a better driver when I'm drunk. That's how I learned, everybody.
oh god
That kinda thing. But sincerely, so it makes sense that, because it's not just factual stuff, right? Like, it could be, like, emotional learning or associations
yeah
too, that those things would be linked. Yeah,
that's so
that's really
fascinating
trippy.
it's
Yeah,
very trippy is absolutely the way I would describe it
yeah. There was someone in the chat who was talking about how, like, the last time they got high, they really took a lot of pleasure preparing food and just carefully chopping all vegetables into the same size, and that is something that'll kinda carry over in the findings that we'll talk about today, like, a lot of people use weed to help themselves focus on a particular kind of task, and so, again, that stereotype that, like, weed makes you quote, unquote, "stupid," weed makes you demotivated, it's a different style of processing.
yeah
It's neurodiversity, right? There's different mindsets for different practices, and it's easier to focus and appreciate a piece of media high for a lot of people,
yep
a bodily state, a lot of different kinds of activities and crafts. Um, and it's not that one is better than the other, it's different experiences and states.
Yeah, Corey says mindfulness marijuana.
Yeah,
Lol, they say lol, but I it really does feel like it is more. There is a mindfulness that happens with it, um,
yeah,
which is well, like mindfulness is actually it's the inversion of awareness, right? Like outside awareness, right? Like mindfulness is like a interiority, like an understanding of your interiority, right? Like I don't. I guess
well, and it's also, like, experiencing,
yeah,
things in the
yeah,
present, which is, again, really hard for neurodiverse people in general, like,
yeah.
you're in your head, you're evaluating yourself, if you're masking, all that kinda stuff.
Yeah, that's a better way to. That's a better description of what
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah. It's so weird and so naturally paradoxical because it's like you're in your head a lot when you're high, but you're also like, "Wow, this pizza tastes so good." Like, you're in
Yeah,
reality and you're in your head more.
yeah. You're in the
It's
moment rather than in
Yeah.
like reality as we normally think about it. Is this like you're so much not in the moment. You're in, thinking about how this affects the future and how the past affects now. Like, but it's like, yeah, mindfulness is much more about the present moment than like the reality that we usually live it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to get in. So, Liv says I used to get so into doing chores when I was high as a teenager, which is such a thing too.
Hmm.
I had a friend, a friend like who I remember their mom would smoke weed and just get like clean the whole house. It was like a whole event.
Hmm.
It's like that's such a
Oh
thing.
yeah. Yeah, put on a fucking Jill Scott, a little India Ari, clean the house, get zooted.
Yep.
It's good shit.
She
Yeah, like
she
certain
was
kind of
Rasta too, so she would like
Jet said, "You could say, well, hi, I am here now." I thought you were just saying that you're high right this moment. I see what you mean.
A little column A, a little column B.
Call me. I am here. Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna try and scroll through the chat a little bit, and then we should keep going
Should move along. Yeah,
on this article
totally.
because I don't want to run out of time for it.
Yeah, yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. I'm glad people are sharing so much about their experiences.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chubby Kumquat said, "I walk through my neighborhood while high, and one of my neighbors has a creepy mannequin in their yard, and it gets me every time." That sounds great and awful.
Yeah. It's for our okay, but I'm an autistic adult and I get high to have fewer meltdowns, so I don't know if parents choosing that for their kids are necessarily off the mark. Yeah, no, totally.
No, no. Yeah, no, that's not bad necessarily. It's just, you know, sucks when the kid can't give insight into or
Yeah.
isn't listened to on their side of things. But no, I mean, um, giving myself pleasurable media to latch onto while high really helps keep me from getting stuck ruminating in my head. Yeah, or a task. One time I just typed all of the animal emojis into Twitter over and over again while high. Because they look different, I was like, "Oh, here's what it looks like on Android. Here's what it looks like on Twitter. Whoa." Methodically.
I can imagine you doing that. Oh man.
Again, very motivated, very focused.
Just
I would have
not
not had the not usefully.
But that's what we're all about here.
Exactly. Like, normally, I would not have the patience to do something like that, but I got so much pleasure from, like, "This penguin is just a head. This one is a whole penguin. Whoa."
Trans Peaks being high in nature is amazing. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Co-signed. Swimming. Though I did get my sister properly zooted last summer. Have I talked about this before?
I
She
don't
fell
I
asleep
don't
on the
think so.
beach with her hand on her stomach, and she still has the tan line.
She still has it? That's
Yeah,
crazy. Use
yeah,
sunscreen, kids. Devin.
yeah. But I look so glowing. Showering high is great. Yeah, hot water, bops.
Yeah, you got to check out Emojipedia sometime, Devin. Have you ever gone on
Oh
there?
god. Scrolling through all the different varieties of an emoji is so good. I
All
love
right.
that shit. Okay,
Let's
moving
let's
along.
move it. Yeah, let's move into the article a little bit.
Yes. So, okay, so as I already mentioned this verbally, but, they talk about the gap in the literature. Surprisingly little is known about the drug's habitual effects because most of the research is still based on this assumption that it's a drug of abuse, as they put it. So people study overuse, dependence, linking smoking a lot of weed to depression or anxiety without necessarily looking at the causal pathway there. Like maybe the weed isn't the problem there. Maybe the person's just depressed and weed is a thing they use and that's just is what it is.
Yeah,
Um,
that's anecdotally that's the way it makes. I mean, in my own life, I mean, when I used more in high schools because I was, incredibly depressed and in a traumatic environment. Like, that was
mhm.
a bad time, and so I would use weed.
Yeah. Yeah, I've definitely found that in my life that when I've reached for it more, it's a useful signal that, like, what am I not able to feel or be present in right now that I
Yeah.
need to do this? It's not the weed's fault, but if I'm using it more than a couple times a week, I'm like, maybe
Yeah.
there's something I can move around." Um, and some people don't have that freedom to move those things around, and so then, fuck it. Or if you just like it, fucking
Yeah.
get zooted every day, who cares? So they go into talking about some of the general trends in who uses weed more frequently from what we already know in research. Chronic use is, unsurprisingly, more common among people who are more oppressed in a lot of ways. Younger people, Black and Latino men, indigenous populations, but also, contrary to stereotypes, chronic users are generally high in conscientiousness and employed, which again we stand the unemployed here, so
What do
no
they
value judgment there.
Right. What does conscientious mean in this context?
Yeah, so it means conscientiousness in terms of, like, the big 5 personality, um, trait measure. Let me just actually pull that up so we
Yeah.
can look at it.
We're gonna learn some
Yeah,
psychology.
yeah, because conscientiousness, I always think of it as, like, the Capricorn, like, fucking, personality trait. Um, so,
Like I said, we're gonna learn some real psychology here.
yeah, Zodiac and Big 5 are almost on the same tier of scientificness, if you ask me. So conscientiousness is kind of, very associated with being very motivated and driven, achievement motivated, orderly. These people are like potential authoritarians in the making, like, they're great employees, dutiful, generally clean is the stereotype, um, self-disciplined. Look, it even says not lazy in
Yeah.
this chart. So most research sees it as a positive trait, even though oh, I'm sorry, I have it probably framed weird. Sorry about
Oh
that.
no, you're good. You're good. I
Okay,
can
you got it
adjust.
fixed. Thank you. Sorry about that. So most research considers conscientiousness this really great personality trait because they're hardworking, they're law abiding. Um, it's a little bit different from openness to experience. Like, you don't have to be a conservative minded to be conscientious, but you're probably kind of quote unquote anal retentive, and need things to be in a particular way and
So
tidy
wait,
and things like that.
you're saying that conscientiousness is almost the opposite of open to experience.
No, openness to experience is its own separate personality dimension on the Big Five.
Right.
So somebody could be very open minded in theory or open to new experiences and be conscientious, but they do tend to be correlated. That if you like things being in a particular way and you're very achievement motivated, like, it's
Right.
just kind of harder to have space in your life for new experiences and rolling with the punches.
Um
Um,
yeah, Malvalence and Coronate are both like uh or Malvalence is like this is roasting me really hard and Coronate is like me too. Um
mm,
uh yeah, God, I hate this about myself. Um I think that like I don't know. I almost feel like that is part of what we do on what we've talked about on this show is like being like less like that,
yeah,
and
yes.
for the reasons of like you're like we've talked about where it's like less beholden to authority and more able to you know think out not feel pressured to do things.
Yeah, I would say that basically, like, conscientiousness is the opposite of the, pathological demand avoidance profile, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
not necessarily a high masking, because you could be very visibly autistic and very, I'm trying to just find, like, a list of a few example items, but it's all lumped in with the other measures here, so we'll skip that. But, it is, like, very law abiding. I have a system for how I do things, and I am trying to not necessarily win social approval, but, like, be a good, responsible person in the way that I think of that. whatever that is. Um, so so research can kind of find that there's a almost a horseshoe shape with conscientiousness and whether it can be kind of debilitating for someone, you know?
Yeah.
Um, and so finding that most chronic users are highly conscientious makes sense, right? These are like anxious people, potentially who are using weed to help them chill out and not be perfectionistic all of the time, potentially.
Um, Man
Uh,
Violence says, I feel like the more colloquial definition of conscientiousness is more positive. Like, yeah, like care about how your actions impact others. Um,
yeah. This is why I think they're the Capricorns, because there is, zodiac alert, sorry, everybody. Um, I don't believe this is metaphysically true, but what it's fun. Um, like there's there are people that they have a very particular way of doing things, they work really hard, and sometimes they get pissed at you for not working as hard as them.
yeah,
Sometimes they my next Substack piece is kind of about this, about listening to resentment. People who go out of their way to meet your needs or to fix things when you didn't even ask them. And then they're like, I did all this stuff to make your birthday party perfect. And you're like, I didn't care that it was perfect. Like, I just wanted to
right,
chill, like that kind of
right.
thing. That to me is like the dark side of too much conscientiousness, where you're orienting your value system around being orderly and doing things right to a degree where it's no longer meeting the need of why you even cared about that stuff in the first place,
Right.
right? So that's me being a hater because I'm a slob and I'm not conscientious.
Uh,
So,
and yeah, like you were saying, this is usually portrayed as a unabashed good thing
right.
in the literature. So this is our haterade
Mhm.
description of it,
Yes.
whereas and especially the way that this is using it, especially comparing it to, like, as they say, despite popular stereotypes of the lazy stoner, like they are saying these people are conscientious as opposed to this lazy,
Lazy stone.
right. So this is yeah, is how this
Right.
is being used in this context.
Right. And then that's part of what the literature misses then, because then they go, "Oh, wow, chronic weed users are employed and highly conscientious." They think, "That's great. I guess weed, doesn't make you not productive." Instead of realizing, "Wait a second here, there's a cost to being so conscientious. It's very stressful." And then people have to self-medicate to help balance out that impulse, because there are again benefits and drawbacks to different approaches and ways of experiencing
Yeah,
reality.
yeah.
Um, so I'm being a hater because I'm again a slob PDAer, but of course there is value to their, being the person who sorts the cans at the anarchist encampment or whatever, like thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry I threw them in a pile, but also shut up. So then they delve into, and I won't go into the full literature review. What research there is about chronic use of weed is kind of mixed. Like, does it make people less or more agreeable? I would say it depends on the task. It depends on what you're asking of them, right? Does it
Yeah.
make them more or less motivated? And they point out that all of this past research is biased by the goal of reducing use. It's all operating out of this very drug negative rather than drug neutral, let's say, lens. And here they're saying, like, we're gonna just start with the premise that cannabis is widely used recreationally. Could be positive, could be negative. Let's just like actually look into how it makes people feel and what they report. So, um, so that brings us to the actual methodology of the present study. So they use something called experience sampling, in addition to collecting some personality traits and demographics in a survey. First of all, they recruited people for this study off of weed subreddits.
Hell yeah. Hell
Yeah.
yeah. That actually doesn't surprise me because I've seen on there are a couple poly subreddits that I've seen that where there's been a bunch of posts about, like, hey, do you want to join a study about poly people? Like, it I think that is a thing that happens a lot on Reddit. And I've done a survey or two I think I've done a survey too about trans stuff from that have
Mhm.
gotten linked to Reddit because it's a really good like the people are self sorted, so like
Right.
yeah
Yeah, and they do mention that that introduces a caveat with conscientiousness, like, if you're somebody who's gonna go out of your way to fill out a survey, you
yeah
might already be baseline more conscientious. So, you know, when you do sample from a subreddit like that, you are specifically you're skewing your sample on purpose. You
right.
don't want a random sample. You want people who are like, "Yeah, I use weed a lot. I do weed a lot." But you're also you're getting Redditors. So it's
Science biased by Redditor.
yeah.
The Redditor bias is high here.
Yes, which maybe is better than just using college freshman psychology majors, which is what we used to rely on all the time, but again, still has its flaws. So what they do is they find people on the cannabis subreddits and make sure they're eligible. How often do you use weed? Okay, you use it often enough to qualify. You're in the US and over the age of 21, and you use it recreationally, not medically. This is this is muddy water, right? Like a lot of us who don't have a medical card kind of use it medically, right? So
Yeah.
it's a mixed bag, but medicalization is just a we've already talked about all the problems with that. Like,
Yeah. And there's plenty of people who, well, I don't know. I guess I know that there was a big practice. Anybody who wanted to smoke weed in Michigan, at least, just could like get a medical card. Like it really wasn't hard. So
mm,
it's like,
whereas here it's pretty hard. There's a really short list
oh, really?
of
Okay.
conditions.
Yeah. Yeah. Before it was legal in Michigan, I believe it was like you could go and find a doctor and pay $100 and get a card. Like it was really easy. I mean, it was enough effort that most people didn't do it because you could just buy illegally. Um,
Mhm.
but it was definitely an option. So
Yeah, yeah. Here in Illinois, it's a little onerous, even though you get a huge discount if you have medical.
wow.
Which that's also a factor. In Michigan, it's so cheap that it's like, why even bother? Um,
Yeah.
went through the medical process. So, so they recruited 1600 people, and then the number of people that were eligible based on these criteria was 285. They measured these people's personality, again, big five, openness to experience, introversion, conscientiousness, things like that, neuroticism. They gave them a baseline. They asked them about their cannabis use in general. They gave them their first attempt at this cognitive effort task. And basically, you have to sort numbers in order from smallest to largest. And you can either sort one digit numbers, so a very easy task, in exchange for like a couple lottery tickets, or you can sort four-digit numbers. So you have to think a little bit more to put them in order from least to largest in exchange for like way more lottery tickets. So it's are you willing to put in more effort for more reward kind of
That
thing.
seems like such an easy thing still.
I know.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, okay, yeah.
So part of this methodologically is people are gonna get pinged once they sign up for this study, asked to do this 5 times a day, and they have to do
Oh,
it right when
wow.
they ping. So that's part of why. You're looking
Okay.
at whether people are willing to pause and do something a little annoying.
Oh, okay. That does make sense then. Because it's not,
Yeah,
yeah. Because that just get doing any of it is annoying. So it's like, okay.
yeah. Waluigi Bowser Jr. said, "I thought weed is legal in Illinois, so why is it hard to get weed?" I'm talking about a medical card. Weed is legal for everyone in Illinois. If you have a medical card, it's a lot cheaper, but it's hard to get a medical card. Yeah. And so then if people were responsive, gave and qualified and gave all this data, then they downloaded an app on their phone called Survey Signal. This is the experience sampling. So they set a time window, and we used to do this stuff. I worked in a lab where we studied romantic relationship functioning, and we would experience sample people on one of them that I worked on was like, "Did you have sex with your partner this today? Like, and why? Why did you?"
What?
Um,
Why? It's such a what were the was it multiple choice? What were the answers?
they and I did not design this study. Let me just say. The reasons were things like to feel closer to my partner, to reduce to or prevent conflict, things like that. There was not an option that was like, "'Cause I was horny." So so
Are academics human?
are academics okay? No, let me tell you, I'm gonna talk shit again.
Please.
I've gotten in legal trouble for talking about this person before, but so I'm not gonna
Oh
name
my
names.
god.
But um yeah, obligation was one. This person also wanted to study women's sexual harassment experiences under a similar, like, real life experience sampling effect, and she literally dead ass said to me, "So where do women get sexually harassed? Like, at the club? Guess we have to ask women at the club?" And I was like, you know, at the time, 21-year-old girl, I was like, "Bruh, everywhere." Like, outside this building right now, you've literally sexually harassed me in a meeting before, this same woman.
Oh my god.
Not at the club, like, it felt like the
Oh.
most victim blamey, sheltered
Oh my god.
logic.
I mean, yeah, it does happen at the club, but not specifically.
No, it's not 'cause you were drinking and wearing a short skirt, like
Oh my god. At the yeah, a
like,
harassment are us at the harassment store.
this is literally a person who would criticize people for women in the lab for how they dressed, so it's
Oh
crazy.
my
Thank you,
god.
Grave, for subscribing so that I'll have an income after I get fined.
Thank you so much, Grave.
Yeah,
Um uh yeah, Grave, are you still
yeah.
streaming? Have you been streaming lately? Go follow him if he is.
Yeah.
Oh, and that reminds me, Eternity Box subscribed before we started, and I completely forgot to thank
Oh,
them
thank you, Eternity
before.
Box.
Yeah,
Thanks
thank you
for the
so much.
support. Yeah. So, yeah, it's where I said, "If anything, the club is one of the spaces where sexual harassment can have consequences." Yeah, if it's a good club
Yeah.
that, like,
Yeah.
takes it seriously, shout out to nowadays in New York where they have, like, consent monitor people working there. Anyway,
Oh yeah.
experience sam right,
Sorry.
go
Casual Live has been was streaming some. Go follow them as well. They're a friend of
hell
mine.
yeah.
Their
Yeah,
streams were very
what kinda
cute.
stuff do they stream?
I know you streamed Stardew a couple times. Yeah.
Fuck yeah. So, yeah, so anyway, that was a long, sharpening my axe aside to say that we used a similar technology where people there you set active hours for the day, so it might be from 10 a.m. till 11 p.m. and somewhere within that window, randomly 5 times a day, the person will get pinged and with a survey that they have to answer within 5 minutes if they want to get paid for participation. And the survey in this case asks, do you feel high? How high? Quick emotion survey. They ask them how motivated they are. They give them the cognitive effort task again. Do you want to sort 1-digit numbers or 4-digit numbers? If you sort the 4-digit ones, you get more bickies, you get more lottery tickets. And then current feelings of conscientiousness.
So wait, were they just paid in lottery tickets only, or
No, that's
that's
like a
just the
bonus.
bonus? Okay.
Yeah. So, and if it's like most studies, they were capping, and you actually get this, you get the high amount regardless of what you do at the end. But they need they need you to believe that you're going to get something extra if you put in extra effort,
Okay.
even if ethically they can't actually do that. And a lot of times, ethically, you can't pay different respondents differently.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Um, so whether or not participants believe that or not also depends on how many studies they've done before. Yada yada.
Yeah,
Uh,
biased against people with pathological demand avoidance. This is a
yeah.
demand you are.
Quarian 8 said this is just capitalism. Yeah, and that's kind of the point, right? Like they're questioning the myth of are stoners less functional in our current world, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah. So and then they did this for a week. So you have a week of answering a survey 5 times a day. And it doesn't just ask do you feel high, but like did you get high today? How many times or whatever.
Yeah, that's such a fascinating, such a tangent, but it's so fascinating, like being around people that are high, and then all of a sudden, like contact high, but like psychological contact high, or like contact
Mhm.
drunk, where you're like around drunk people, and it's like you could. I don't know about you, but for me, I'm like I could really feel that shit, um, as if I was high.
Yeah, some of that, yeah, because I know Sleepy Eepers, is that what their name is? In the chat was asking about, is contact high real? And there's a couple of things going on, because one part of it is the placebo effect. If you
Yeah.
just put a drink in someone's hand, they start feeling drunker before they even start drinking
Mhm.
because of the associations, and they're, you know, mentally like,
Yeah.
"I'm shifting into soup mode. I'm shifting into alcohol mode." So you get more relaxed, and then it's also, um and I've heard some people talk about this with unmasking. If you hang out around a bunch of people who are acting a little drunk or a little high and silly, you're gonna feel less judged
Yeah.
and more relaxed. And so then you're like, "Well, I'm gonna say some dumb, silly shit too,"
Yeah.
you know? That's it's not like the drug ever really makes us do that stuff. It's that we
Yeah.
want to experience that state, and we need I'm gonna sound like Zizek here. We need the ritual of I am becoming drunk to be allowed to be permitted sniff, sniff, to to act to behave in a drunk way, you know?
And yeah.
So, yeah, so in a sense, yes, and then also there is the hot boxing effect. If you're around people smoking, you do get a
Yeah.
little bit. Okay, yeah, so they dove into all that stuff. I kinda already talked generally about the baseline participant, stuff, and it was yeah, it was between 10 AM and 11 PM that they
So
randomly
did they
surveyed
ask
people.
about method at all?
Yeah, let's see if that, I think they do have some demographics um, on how people dosed. Oh, and here's the number sorting task.
Okay, so
So basically
that is a little like it's not complicated, but it does take. I can imagine being high enough that that second sorting task could get really difficult.
Sure. Though what they found was that people really were still totally down to take the harder task
Yeah.
most for the most part.
I
Um,
I also have dyscalculus too a little bit, so that
which
would
is a
also.
problem with this measure, right? Like, they could have done something that was like a word problem, you know?
Yeah.
So there's some issues with that. Um, if participants and again, just another methodological note, if participants reported feeling high, we asked them how they ingested. Okay, so smoking, vaping, edible, or other, and to select all the reasons they got high by checking one or more reasons because I liked the feeling, to forget my worries, etc.
Oh
Using the
my.
marijuana motives measure.
Oh shit. Is there
I l
I feel like there needs to be more words that are like horny, and this is a thing in
Mhm,
modern culture where we talk about horny for it. You know,
mhm,
like there's hungry, like I'm hungry, but it's like I always thought about that
mhm.
with a cigarette. Like I was like, I need a word for like I'm horny for a cigarette. Like,
Yeah, craving. We need more craving words.
yeah, it is just craving, but it's more, it feels more specific than that. But anyway,
The phenomenology of, like, craving a cheeseburger is different from craving a cigarette,
yeah,
and so
yeah.
there should be different words for it or whatever. Yeah. I also just love, like, scale development, like, I'm gonna make the marijuana motives measure, and I'm gonna make spend a year of my life making that. Um
Did you ever hear about the guy that let every bug sting him? Y-
No, but that's
yeah,
great.
yeah. Like literally, he like had every fucking like bullet ants, and he went to the fucking rainforest where they have bullet ants, and had it. I don't know if it stings or bites, but yeah, I can't. It's been so long since I read about that, but he was like, yeah, Bold Ant actually wasn't that bad compared to the fucker ant from whatever. You know what I mean? Like he just
Oh
did
my
all of
god.
them, and he fucking sorted them. Like God, what a fucking
Making charts and, like,
yeah,
taking pictures of the bite marks, I'm sure.
yeah.
That seems like Redditor behavior also, like, the complete ant bite tier list.
Oh yeah, so we got Bullet Ant. That's just an A tier. We're not gonna put that in. Or is it the opposite? That's a D tier. It's not quite an E tier yet.
We're getting some other words for craven in the chat. Hankering,
Yeah.
yearning,
Thank you, my
hungering,
spouse. My spouse,
longing,
BP Money. Thank you, hankering. It's very good.
pining. Again, a lot of these are too soulful.
Yeah.
Those are great words, but like you're pining for a cigarette? No. You're horny for a cigarette. Like you're
I've pined for a cigarette.
yeah.
I mean, it's not usually the feeling, but I have gotten there.
I need something that sounds more rabid, like the urge to pick off a scab. What is the word for that?
Ah.
Like when I watch pimple popping videos and I need to go to town and ruin my whole shit. Like whatever the word is for that.
Can you guys pay attention to chat and stream at once? Kind of. A
Yeah,
little.
I think
A
we do.
little.
I think we do pretty good, but y'all are giving us gems.
I know. Our chat is too
Yeah.
good. If our chat was worse, it'd be a lot easier.
Yeah.
You guys are
If we were
too-
more horny for chat messages, but instead we're just getting like just the Hitachi magic wand of good comments is just on our clits.
Chat, clip that. Clip that chat.
A word to our community.
We're getting fucking, what is it, force orgasmed, but with
But we're chit chatting and hanging out.
I'm gonna die. All right, let's keep reading this scientific article that was published in a journal.
Yes, this is the shit. Megan is in the chat, straight up dropping some Lin-Manuel Miranda bars. I'm hankering for some hanker, son.
Yes.
Literally sounds like Lin-Manuel. So this just goes into what some of the specific surveys are that they use to measure conscientiousness and stuff. So we can skip that, and we can skip some of the statistical corrections they're doing. Basically, just know that they are controlling for a person's baseline and looking at how much have they changed from day to day or moment to moment, and also how different are they on average from another person or another group of people, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
there's
I think-
always oh, sorry.
Oh no, it's okay. I'm recovering. I think so.
We gooned too hard on the chat. So they're looking at both within subject, meaning how does one person change as a result of getting high within subject effects, and also between subject effects. What are the differences between people who get high a little bit often and people who get high a lot?
Mm-hmm.
So we can look all that shit. So here's just the frequency stuff, since we did have some questions about that. They use the fucking Microsoft Word fucking chart maker. I know that fucking Calibri font. So when you
why I
break
got
down
high? Question mark. Such a weird way to phrase that. Why I got
Yeah.
high? Why
Yeah.
me get high?
And this is from the existing marijuana motivation survey. So it has its own problems and assumptions. Just like the why do you have sex question. These were the options: liking the feeling of getting high, to be creative, to forget worries, to concentrate, to get along, to be liked, sexual reasons, or medical reasons.
I love that there is a horny.
Yes.
There is a gooner, we gooning on it. And it's wild that medical is so low. That's fascinating to me, because I assume medical would include pain relief, and I would have assumed that would have been a lot higher.
Well, they did recruit people who described as recreational users.
Oh, okay.
Only. But even in there are some people describing their use on an instance by instance basis as this time I got high for a medical reason. So again, trying to separate those two things is flawed from the start.
Yeah. I mean, concentration could be, I would, and forget worries, I would argue, could be a medical reason too. So,
Absolutely. Yeah. Also, hello, Jay Bows. Yes, you did pick the wrong day to show up late. One of my resident weed experts in real life, and the person who taught me indica couch as a mnemonic. So,
yes, I'd never
hey,
heard that. So I'm indebted.
yeah. So just looking at this survey, these options, and knowing, garbage in, garbage out, your results are only as good as your measure. I'm curious if people see any reason why they normally get high not listed here.
That's a great question.
Um, yeah, so feel free to put that in the chat. I would say, like, liking feeling, I would just if these were my options, I would pick that a lot. Um, to feel more, like, loose and social is one reason, and I don't see that well captured by get along or to be liked,
Yeah,
you know?
those are very, I would get along. I imagined I'm smoking weed because I have to meet my parents and they suck. That's get along.
Maybe. Or, like, peer pressure implications is what I
To
get
be
from it too, like
to be liked is for me was more of a peer pressure thing.
mhm, mhm,
This should have been, instead of a scale like this, should have been like a cloud. It should have been multi-axis. I don't
mhm.
know if that's a thing that people will do in these kinds of studies, but like there should have been tags. There should have been a bunch of tags you could pick from, just a whole bunch of
Yeah,
them, and then I'm sure you could visualize that somehow of just like what the different tags were. And then you could
yeah.
even correlate like so people, people frequently like were picking liking the feeling and creativity together, and they were frequently forgetting worries and concentration were together and stuff like that, or
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
clustering which motives go together would be a really cool statistical analysis, yeah.
There's a lot of different ways to analyze. There would be a lot of different ways to analyze more of like a system of tags.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's more like qualitative data, which people in social psych, there's this huge bias that if something's more open-ended and qualitative rather than simple quantifiability, it's less scientific, which is not true.
Huh.
It just means when you go more qualitative, you're not hiding how you distort things to make them seem more science-y, you know what I mean?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Whereas as soon as you throw it in a graph, a simple fucking bar chart, histogram, whatever, like, oh, it seems so scientific. It's like,
Right.
no, you just can't show all of the things that don't fit.
Right. You can't show the
Um,
nuance as much.
yeah, so I wish it was more open-ended, because I think the framing of some of these is bad. Like none of these feel like they actually capture my answer. And as soon as you have a measure that doesn't have everybody needs to have a home. That's a
Yep.
a principle of survey design. If they don't have a home, your data's shit.
Yeah.
That's why gender measures are so bad most of the time.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. Just thinking about having done a few studies, that is very much where, like, when I don't feel good about this, about answering the study, it's because it's like nothing really fits. And that makes sense, is like
Mhm.
literally not having a home.
Yeah. The data is forcibly distorting you because
Yeah.
of the researcher's own biases
And
and what
that's
they overlook.
Yeah, and that's classic, like when people do political surveys purpose, when they do that on purpose, where it's like, do you think Hamas should kill babies, or do you think Israelis deserve to live? Like,
Mhm.
right.
Right. Right. Uh, I could say something libertarian there, but I won't. This is why we need the two access political test all the time, because if you only ask people if they're liberal or whatever, yeah.
Should we do
Um,
those on stream sometime?
yeah, so let me add that
I've
to
never
the fucking
I've never
oh
actually
my god.
done one before, or if I have,
Oh
it's been so long. I don't have no idea where I'd fit on there. I think we'd
Oh,
be
there's
pretty
so many
similar.
different I'm gonna put that down, like, political access quizzes, because there's so many of them, and this would be, like, such a chance to nerd out on shitty survey design too. Oh, ooh. This is a great idea for a segment. Okay.
Uh,
Um,
yeah, Chicago said, what category would improve mood fall under then? Like if I only smoke when I get really angry or irritated. You're
yeah,
absolutely right. I guess it would be forget worries would be the closest to that.
yeah, I would think so. Jay Bao said, improve sleep, and what qualifies as medical, non-medical use is so problematic.
That's a
Yep.
huge, yeah, that's a huge uh like area, because that's, I would say that is probably people's the reason people use it like outside of a like strictly recreational use. Sleep is such a common one.
Mm-hmm.
Even though
Massive.
ironically it makes me not able to sleep. I have to be careful not to smoke too late, or else I'll be laying up having good ideas.
Your brain is working too fucking good, dog. You
Okay,
can't sleep.
so random, but I literally get like, I'm a person that has a lot of ideas. Like that's just who I am. And
Not to flex,
not
but
to. I do. I don't know. I think it's true. I have a lot of good
I'm sure
ideas.
it is true. It is true.
I'm really bad
Knowing
at
you well, it is.
I'm really bad about doing them all the time, but I do have good ideas. And so when I'm high, I legitimately have. I'm just I have so many ideas, and they're like I literally feel like they're not just like I go back to them later. I'm like, no, those are good ideas. Like I wasn't on some bullshit. Like those are legitimately good ideas I still want to do. I've had
Yeah.
a bunch of good ideas for the show. God,
Mm-hmm.
Time Theft Today was I think the name, I'm pretty sure I came up with it when I was high.
Yeah.
Um,
So much of the architecture of the show in general, and a lot of
yeah,
segments too,
yeah,
have
yeah.
been your idea. So,
But specifically, I
yeah.
think Time Theft Today was when I was high, and some of the other, I can't. I think there was some good episodes that came out of me being high, but I can't remember what they were now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. People are mentioning other ways that reasons they use weed: meltdown prevention, changing sensory tolerance or perception windows, which is interesting. That could be medical, but it could also just be for fucking fun, right? Like
Yeah,
for exploring your own phenomenology, like changing your subjective experience is itself just interesting, you know? Um, Shower thoughts outside of the shower.
yeah, absolutely. That would probably be
Mhm.
creative. So that would have a. Although I usually
Yeah.
don't smoke for that reason. Yes, shout out to Casual Live for helping with the Time Theft Today name.
Mhm. Quarian said, "Now I wanna make self-surveys to collect data from myself on desired outcome, action, actual result." You should do that. You'd probably learn a lot
That
of
is
fun stuff.
fascinating.
Yeah. Self-studying, that's the only valid form of behavioral analysis. Studying your own behavior
I need to
for
do
your own
that for
goals.
poops. I need to get real about my gut and just
Mm,
have a survey for when I poop.
yeah, with the stool sample chart
I need to
and
get one of those
everything.
German toilets or Dutch toilets or whatever that have like the shelf that it rests on.
Oh my god.
Have you never heard of that? That's like a normal
I,
thing. Uh,
I know it. I understand why it's useful, but oh, oh
you
dear.
hate it.
I do hate it. Savoring nature is another reason.
Continental poop shelf toilets.
Jesus Christ.
Anyway, let's keep going.
Yeah. So yeah. So the reasons here are a little bit. This wasn't the main purpose of the study, but you can see the bias from the previous researchers bleeding in here. Um, when you look at the 260 participants, 5 surveys a day, people missing some of them, it breaks down to 3,701 surveys being sent. Of those, a majority of the time, people were high.
That's wild.
Yeah.
I mean, it makes
So these
sense.
are
It looking at that ratio, and this is only during the day, right? Like this is
10 a.m. till 11 p.m.
yeah, yeah. If I imagine a stoner that gets high every day, this is about the ratio I would imagine for sure.
Yeah. That if you randomly quiz them at 5 random times during the day,
Yep,
2/3 of the time they'll be high.
yep.
Um, the majority way of getting high was smorking, vaping, and then eating. Other and unknown, boofing, etc.
Yeah, drinks aren't on there. Drinks aren't on there.
No, I think that's still pretty niche.
Yeah,
Um, maybe people would just say eating if they were asked, even though it's a little different.
yeah.
Um, so yeah.
I did see people asking. I did a Ripple, which is like a little packet of powder that you put into water. And I was trying to research about like how much to do for somebody who's never done it before. And I did
Mm.
find people like, can you snort that though? People are like, I
Can you boof
mean,
it?
yeah, I mean, you could definitely boof it. People are like, well, I mean, there's liquid and it's water soluble, and your nasal passages have water in it, so probably. Doesn't sound fun
Yeah.
though.
Quarian said, "What would sublingual oil be?" Yeah, the under the tongue. It shouldn't count as eating. So again, bad survey design. I feel
Yep.
like,
Yeah, you can't
because it
know how many people said eating for that because it was up to their
right,
interpretation whether that was eating.
right.
They
So,
make THC suppositories? What?
oh my god, of course, makes sense to me. You know,
I
it's a
mean, it
mucous
does make
membrane.
sense. I'm just I mean,
Boof life.
I'm glad. I'm glad people are out here doing it. Weed
Yeah, and
lube.
maybe it feels good if you have like tense. I would love to try weed lube. I still haven't, but
Does that actually get you high?
I think you would just feel it a little bit in the zone, numb or more sensitive, maybe, depending. Okay, so simple findings. What do you know? When people use weed, they do feel high. Science. They also report feeling less fearful and less stressed compared to when they're not high. There is being high increases positive emotions across the board. So they gave them a pretty large emotion list to choose from. And you can see kind of the averages and the error bars there. So the averages are reflected with the dots, and the error bars are kind of, 95% of people fall within that, threshold of that mean. Um,
So
relative to when,
you don't have silliness George who is just feels silly every never feels silly or whatever, right?
right? Yeah.
I I
The
I,
wider that,
I
yeah.
legitimately do think that that meme of the spiders George, if anybody doesn't know, where it's like, uh it, science says that you eat 8 spiders a night, but they didn't account for spiders George who eats 10,000
Yeah,
10,000
every
spiders
year.
a night every yeah.
Yeah.
And I legitimately do think that like taught more about statistics to people than like any other piece of fucking education.
Yeah. It's a great fucking meme. I love a stats meme. Um, so
Oh,
yeah, so what they found was that like almost all positive emotions are on average increased when a person is high, compared to their baseline. So these are on the left are within person effects. So me just comparing myself, I am more awful, more silly, more happy, more inspired when I'm high compared to when I'm not. And then chart B is the between person effect. So on average, all people in the sample who are high feel more awe, feel more love, feel more inspiration, feel more pride, hope, interest, silliness, contentedness, happiness, and gratitude compared to people when they are not high.
wait. Okay, so okay, I think I get it. Where it's the left. And let me try and re-describe it just
Hmm.
to make sure I understand. So the left, A on the left is
Hmm.
like compared to your baseline, whereas B is compared to the baseline of the average person.
Right. Yeah, and so they're seeing like a reduction because I know the way that B is oriented can look a little confusing. Um, it's red there. Those red ones indicate a significant reduction in disgust, scorn, fear, guilt, embarrassment. So those negative emotions went down on average for people who,
Wait,
if you look at the high group.
how did it? How? Wait, because it's
It's
But
the
there,
change amount. So that one, like the way the
oh,
graph is like oriented is a little confusing.
okay.
Um, but yeah, that's just kind of the size of the effect. So there's a really when we look at just how somebody personally changes when they get high, you see most of the movement in feeling more happy emotions. And then if you look at as a group, um, people get kind of a benefit of a significant reduction in negative emotions, if that
Uh,
makes sense.
yeah. Thank you so much, Weasel Ploof, for the Prime.
Yeah.
We love those
Yeah.
Bezos bucks. If you have Prime, you can give us free Bezos bucks. It costs nothing to you. Um,
Hmm.
we love them.
Yes. Yeah. If you already got that Prime, you got some family subscription, you know, might as well.
Oh, so
Um,
the one so in graph A, is it saying that embarrassment and disgust went up a little bit?
yes. Yeah, those 2 went up a little bit. Those are the 2
Interesting.
negative emotions that went up a little bit.
Interesting.
Um,
And which
yeah.
fits kind of my like my image, my anecdotal data of it too. Um like, you know, I can definitely imagine getting embarrassed more being high, and I could definitely imagine getting disgusted more easily.
Mhm. Right. Yeah, and you see that, yeah, that makes sense, like, you're kind of feeling it's such a weird you're more not necessarily more social in the sense of being outgoing, but you're just more
Yeah.
kind of, like, feelingsy
Yeah.
when you're high. So it's like, "Oh, no, I said this stupid thing, I'm embarrassed."
Right.
Also, people do get nauseated when they're high, that's a pretty common effect, so disgust, that linkage
Yep.
makes sense, just being more intuitive. Um, and
It's
yeah,
interesting that
so
there's a reduction on suspicion, because that's like one of those things that you know, I feel like, that's the stereotype that you get really like anxious, but more specifically kind of suspicious, right? Like you feel like
mhm,
there's agents in vans outside your house watching you. um it's
mhm.
interesting that that was a reduction, but it's interesting also because anger, guilt, scorn, sadness, and shame were actually, their error bars are actually in
Pretty
the,
big.
yeah, so they're actually on the other side. So there were a decent amount of people that actually did have an increase in those.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Um, there is yeah, I get which makes, I think, some sense in that you can be more ruminative, you can be more in touch with your emotions, and so an awareness of negative emotions can kind of increase, even while you're also likely feeling more positive emotions at the same time for a lot of these
Yeah.
people.
Yeah.
Um, you just feel so much.
Yeah. Yeah, because all
Uh,
the positive emotions are far outside. Their error bars are far in the positive. Like this is not.
Mhm.
This is a much greater effect in. Yeah, and I don't know why. So basically for the in that's interesting that like in A, like people felt a lot more positive emotions compared to their baseline,
Mhm.
but a lot less negative emotions compared to the average baseline. So I guess that
Mhm.
implies that maybe the people that are doing it have more baseline of
Negative
those
emotions.
negative
Mhm.
emotions than most people.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know, some people were asking about this chart in the chat, and Jay Bows, for example, asked, "I'm confused on this one, what's the high level takeaway?" This chart is not comparing, uh, users between each other in terms of the people who use a ton of weed versus people who use it a couple times a week. This is we'll get to that one, but this one's averaged. Um, and so what this is yeah, this is finding that people have, on average, weed smokers have a baseline elevated level of more negative emotions, what as like a personality characteristic or baseline emotion.
But that
Um,
weed is then helping them get
but then weed is
closer.
helping.
Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting.
yeah. So cool shit. Um, and so that allows them to describe the emotional profile. So this is kind of getting into more of the amount of weed a person uses. Um, describe the emotional profile of very frequent users relative to less frequent, but still frequent ones. And this is where, again, this goes into what we were just saying as well, just even more so. Those who get high very frequently, so multiple times per day, have a baseline of more negative emotions, more disgust, scorn, fear, and embarrassment. Medium to large effect sizes. So again, pretty much what we were just saying. Can't
Yeah.
say that it's weed's fault here. Unfortunately, that's what the literature normally interprets. But if you go from a quasi self-medicating or self-regulating would be the less stigmatized way to put it, I guess. People use weed more if they need that mood lift more.
Have you ever seen that website
Yeah.
that's like, what is it? God, I hope I can remember this. It's like causal link or something. It just has a shitload of data. If somebody in the chat remembers what I'm talking about, it's just a shitload of data that has been like
Various correlations, right?
yes, yeah.
Hold on, I used to make my students look at this shit. It's by Tyler Vigen. I'll pull it up real quick. I
Yeah,
love this shit.
this shit is great.
Yeah. I'll put it in the link.
Viewership of the Big Bang Theory against Google searches for how to make a baby.
Um,
That
stock
is,
price and Google.
yeah, that is sus versus MSCI's Inc. stock price.
Yeah, this is
Oh
just
wow, that's a great one. Distance between Jupiter
yeah.
and Earth, bachelor's degrees awarded in consumer sciences. Uh, 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 what is it? Fucking the signs are real. The heavens
Mhm.
affect Earth.
Sailor Jupiter is making us not get business degrees anymore. Such a G for that. I love this site. They have so many good ones about just because this is more than correlation, it's because it's doing time sampling, which means you're adding even more data points, which makes it even easier to find a correlation, right? Because I bet, like, for this one, if you looked outside of 2003 and 2021, probably they don't hang together, right?
Oh,
You're just looking
right,
there's just a brief moment in time where these stars aligned and these 2 things tracked each other.
right.
And
Which
so
is
it's
super
easier to
common
find.
for any news article. I mean, like that, that is the way that they present this shit.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very selective, in cooking the books. My favorite in these are, when they use different causes of death, because they have, like, all kinds of strange causes of death, like people strangled by their bed sheets accidentally and shit like that.
Wait,
Um
go up to what was that one? How nerdy Tom Scott's YouTube video titles are. The number of movies Mila Kunis appears in. That's
Yes.
really good. What
Yes.
is the how nerdy? What is how nerdy?
It's as rated by an AI.
So it's even more bullshit.
It's even more bullshit. Yeah. They fed YouTube titles to an AI and said, "How nerdy are these?"
Oh my god.
Yeah. This shit's so good. It just goes on and on. Every now and then, there are things that maybe make sense together, but
Accidentally.
yeah.
Why do I have green poop?
So, yeah, so that's a problem with correlating, a person's personality and whether they use weed a lot. It's not that surprising and not a negative thing that people who have more negative emotions would take the drug that makes you feel better.
Right. Yeah, and this is actually a little bit different than what we were looking at because those are spurious correlations, right? Where they just happen
Mhm.
to correlate. Where this is like reverse correlation, like
Right.
what we're positing is that you know this relationship is linked. It's just caused by like people that have these personality types are smoking more weed rather than they're smoking their weed and therefore becoming more of these personality types.
Right. Yeah. Um, so yeah, so then this is the overall motivation finding. Um, and we'll look at these types of motivation real quick in a sec. But basically, they found that being high was not associated with any dimension of motivation. So they measured a couple of different motivation types: external motivation, integrated motivation, introjected motivation, and whether you feel a motivation, so not motivated. Um, and I'll scroll up to the methods and we'll look at how they define the differences in those things. Um, but basically, the summary is uh, when people get high, they don't report feeling less motivated in terms of uh, am I motivated to pursue a goal because I'm going to get rewarded for it? External motivation, they're still motivated by external sources like money or lottery tickets, as well as intrinsic motivation, which is I do this thing because it matters to me. You know, this is important to me. This is my goal. They're still motivated intrinsically too.
Mhm.
Um, the one type of motivation that people lose when they're high is uh, being motivated only because people would be upset. They would be upset with themselves if they did not do them.
Interesting.
So yeah,
And that
that
goes
is
into
introjected. Yeah.
that's like the stereotype of the lazy stoner. It's like, oh yeah, it's not so much that they're lazy, and again, not that that's a real thing anyway, but it's like, oh well, they just don't want to do shit that like,
What they don't want to do.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So this is basically saying, okay, when we take all of this research together, people who smoke weed a lot tend to be these really conscientious people who feel a lot of negative emotions. They normally are people who beat themselves up a lot, in other words.
Yeah,
And when they're high, they don't beat themselves up as much. They don't say, I'm a piece of shit if I don't do the dishes. They're like, I just don't want to do the dishes. Fuck it.
yeah.
And they're fine. So this is a loss of motivation that is really more in line with, like, the loss of negative emotions, really, I
Um,
is more or less what we're finding.
the peer pressure is coming from inside the house.
Right.
uh,
Yeah, that's kinda what introjected motivation is that voice that's like, "You're a piece of shit if you're not doing this," or like, "Oh, if I don't get this done today, I'll be mad at myself." It's like, "Well, do I really need to have that thing done today? Who cares? Whatever, it'll be fine."
J Bows, interesting. You were kinder to yourself. I mean, yeah, yeah. I mean, that. I think that's a really good way to put the whole fucking this whole what I'm reading out of this whole fucking study is just you're kinder to yourself.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. People are still motivated to do things that are important to them or that they need to do for like an external reward, like your job or something. Something that on a practical level, there's like a reason to do it. Um, but they're less guilt motivated, which is great. That's a good thing.
That's a great thing.
Um, yeah. And then here is the effect on the number sorting task. And effort discounting. So basically just are you gonna like offload like, oh, it isn't worth putting in the extra cognitive effort? Um, and here's the summary of that. We found little evidence that being high was related to a person's willingness to exert actual mental effort. Chronic cannabis users volunteer discounting is basically saying I'd rather not have the higher amount of lottery tickets and not do the harder task.
Yeah.
And there's basically what they found is there's no statistical difference between these 2 bars. It might look like there's kind of an average difference of high people doing the harder task less, but statistically, this is a total wash,
Mhm.
basically. So,
Yeah.
people aren't
If you look at the error bars, like they're not that much different than the difference between the two bars.
exactly, yes. They overlap way more than they are apart.
Yeah.
And so you can't really say that this is like a reliable effect, or difference. Um, so generally speaking, statistically, high people were about as likely to take the harder number sorting task, um, than people who were not high. So there's a lot of and when you think about it, the big error bars, there's a lot of reasons why you might or might not wanna do the harder task. You know, you might be in the middle of doing something when you get the survey pinging you,
Yeah.
or be tired or whatever. There's a lot of reason to be like, "Oh, it's not worth it right now."
Yeah. But if being high was like such a big part of it, like you would expect to if you would expect to see it even despite all of the error because you can't predict, you can't account for all of the other shit that could be happening. If being
Mhm.
high was a big reason why you would put it off, you would expect to see those, the difference still be there even,
Right.
because you have a large enough sample size that uh, that, it shouldn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And this kinda all goes into the fact that motivation is really complex. Like, why we're motivated to do something involves a lot of different variables, and that's why laziness is not a useful construct, including when you're talking about it as an effect of being high. Like,
It's almost like we're
uh
talking to an expert on that.
well, I'm just a poster. I just post about this a lot.
Posted your way into a book deal.
Literally though. Um, Because I'm posting motivated more than anything else. Um, so it's kind of, again, revealing the best science that I just love is when it reveals flaws in how scientists who have come before have even thought about this stuff, which when
Yeah.
you really think about these kinds of results, that is what it does. Like, why would we think it would be as simple as smoking weed makes you lazier?
Yeah.
Like, lazier at what? Like, why do we care? Like,
Right.
we're assuming a lot of things there.
Yeah.
Yes. Um, let's see, among, people who get high very frequently, this is here where we see a little bit, I think, one statistically significant difference. Let me see. People who get high multiple times per day are not less motivated than those who get high multiple times per week. Okay, so that's not a statistically significant effect. Is this figure 6? Yeah, figure 6b. So this is looking at the effect of chronic versus still chronic, but not so much weed users. Basically, there's no statistical difference for the most of these variables here. So people who smoke a ton of weed aren't intrinsically less motivated people.
So
I mean,
so does this
sorry.
study not have like a control as in they didn't ask these same questions to like people that don't smoke weed, but they are going off of established science, I would assume, of like what those
Yeah,
baselines are.
yeah. So there are no non-smokers, non-weed users in this sample. It's looking at exclusively high users to see their own changes and their own overall. So there is no like non-smoker control, right?
But there is like they're going off of previous data.
So, yeah, so for any of these motivation, surveys, you do know what, like, the overall average is typically in other surveys for what they are,
Mm-hmm.
um, which itself is gonna have some error variance. But here, they're definitely just interested in targeting more, um they're looking at the far end of the spectrum, right? Like, it also would be worthwhile
Yeah.
to measure the motivation and compare those 2 things.
Right.
But this is like, "Okay, let's look at the dank people. Where are they
Yeah.
at?"
The chronic people.
The chronic, and here they find actually hyper chronic users, if we can call them that. Some of these are statistically significant in a higher motivation than the rest of the group, finding.
Interesting.
So people who smoke a ton, multiple times a day, in some cases are statistically, and you can see these are positive, more motivated than people who smoke a couple times a week.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't even know what that
Um,
says, but it is interesting.
so for example, one of the ones that's the most significant and positive is the introjected, which this is again the beating yourself up motivation style. So
Right.
people who smoke a lot have a strong baseline of saying they need to do shit because they'd be mad at themselves if they didn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
And that's the type of motivation that weed brings down. So lock and key, clicking into place there.
Yeah, tough to strain matters when it comes to motivation for certain activities too. Yeah, we talked about that a little bit earlier about how that is definitely a flaw in this, that they don't really talk about um, strain, but it would be pretty hard to um, reliably track that stuff. So
Mhm.
it makes sense that that wasn't I would like to see a more specific study that looked at um, differences in strains.
There is really good data on the one, what is the strain review website? Have you seen this before?
No.
It breaks down a ton of data. Leafly. I'll pull it up real quick because the amount of now this is all user like self-report reviews, so it's not, the best, like it's flawed, right? It's Redditor effect, but I'll just show it. It's
I
worth
also
looking
have
at.
to wonder if strains, like I always assumed back in the day when I was smoking, is that strains, I assumed strains weren't really real. Like I assumed
Mhm.
that like when people talked about strains, they were just like, I don't know, kind of capping, like just like, oh yeah, this is this strain because it's a strain. It's Pineapple Express because you've heard of that strain, and so you might want to
Mhm.
buy it more. But I do think that now that there's a legal industry, there probably is more like actual strains that are what they say they are. Um,
Yeah, it's just more, because it used to be you'd just buying a weed from some guy who he's gonna
right.
tell you whatever the fuck, like it's a marketing pitch, and it still is now, right? These are big businesses now.
Yeah, Hell
But
Arctic says I also assume, but just because it seems like marketing ploy by dispensaries, um, and so that definitely, I have to imagine that has to be part of it too.
yeah, that's definitely a big the incentive structure there. Um, and that allows you to distinguish different market positioning. Some strains are more expensive than others. And people stake a claim on a new strain by breeding one existing one with the other, and then I'm the person that makes this strain, right?
Right.
So that's a flaw. But I tend to invest at least a little something in the Leafly data. I'd be curious what Jay Bowes thinks about this. Um, but I tend to think like this is data, self-report from 4,000 people, 4,300 people. Um, which is pretty good, so you can definitely, as you hop from strain to strain on this site, you see a lot of differences. So, this is one that people report feeling energetic, happy, and talkative, dry mouth, paranoid, dry eyes. They use it for stress, they use it for depression. And if you, look up something different like wedding cake, you'll say people say they use it for sexual reasons more often. See, relaxed, aroused, hungry. And that's why it's called wedding cake, is the makes you hungry and makes you horny. So
Interesting.
yeah.
J Bow says Leafly is great, and also the terpenes have a lot to do with the different effects in the strains. I shop by terpene now. I've never even heard of
Mm,
that.
yeah, and those can be like extracted and like added to things as I understand it. If you get a lot of like CBD stuff or Delta stuff, you can get terpenes like added to them. I have
Marquez,
not fucked around with this stuff
Marquez, the GM. It's like adding blue to the drugs and Breaking Bad. Yeah.
yet. Terps. God, that makes me think of like this guy who was on Channel 5 before Andrew Callahan got rightfully canceled. There was like a young terp guy who like every other word he said was terp.
The young Terps.
The young terps. Love it. So, I think there is both some hype and some truth to this stuff. Like it's more scientific than wine tasting. But we don't have good like scientific quality data. We just have self-report. This is fragrantica.com, except a
Yeah.
better website. So is it worth studying? Absolutely, because there are a lot of people who seek out weed for medicinal purposes and they get the wrong strain and they got them fucked up,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
too bad. So we need better data, and the way that that starts is with more research like this that is more neutral in its approach and descriptive rather than judgmental, even though it still also has its flaws.
Yeah. So
I
we're
think.
we're actually coming up getting close to time, which is the I we thought this Devin said that this discussion would take an hour, which I'm very glad that it's gone
Sorry.
the no, I'm very glad it's gone the whole time. Because there's been a lot of really fun and interesting tangents. So I'm not mad about that one bit. And I definitely I want more scientific articles. This has been so good. This was as good as I was hoping one of these would be. And I want bad science articles too. I want to
Mhm.
rip
Oh
apart
my
bad ones
god.
too. So,
I'll do that, yes, sometime.
um, but yeah. So since we are getting close, how close to are we to the end of this? Can we, just because I want to make sure that we get through this whole thing.
Yeah, we only have 2 more sets of results, conscientiousness and weed hangover.
Okay.
So I knock out those last couple of results. And also just wanna also reiterate, thank you so much everyone for sharing your reactions and experiences to this because it
Yeah.
enriches the conversation so much. That's part of why it's so rich right now and
Oh yeah.
like of content.
We're gonna no, never mind. Keep going.
I'm gonna bust.
you, you can't. Anyway, let's keep going.
Speaking of sexual harassment.
Are we sexually harassing the chat? I'm not sure.
Oh god, content warning. Or like one of those haunted house like warnings, like once you walk past this point, you will hear us talking about edging to chat messages.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the personality stuff, the dimensions of conscientiousness. So they actually did break down conscientiousness into a couple of dimensions in this study: responsibility, industriousness, self-control, orderliness, virtue, and traditionalism. So shit that sucks. Like whack cop best best little boy in the classroom shit.
Teacher,
Like,
yeah. Oh man.
yeah.
So what
Uh,
are these standard um
so,
figures of conscientiousness? Is this or is
uh,
this their some a creation of theirs?
this is not a creation of theirs. This is, not every time when conscientious is measured did they go into this level of granularity because 'cause you're already normally looking at 5 total personality traits, like openness, conscientiousness, agreeability, things like that. So but this is kind of delving into that and saying, "Okay, when we say conscientiousness, what are the different, traits that cluster into that overall,
Mhm.
trait?" And that's like scale development stuff. It's like how much of the variance in one of those things can be predicted by the variance in the other. How much do they like tend to cluster together?
So do you think this is just like bullshit? Like
Well, it's I mean, what the fuck is virtue, right? Like,
yeah.
what on fucking the goddamn are you assuming when you say that? But like at the same time, these things are socially constructed, and also, yeah, people believe in them because they're socially constructed. You know what I mean? So
Yeah. So it's kind of like there is truth to it because we believe there's truth to it.
just like the zodiac, it's like the stars. So yeah, would somebody, let's say, because like I don't know, are any of these things natural?
yeah.
You might say self control might be some trait that exists as a biological average difference tendency somewhere, right? Something kind of like self control,
The marshmallow
impulsivity,
test is
marshmallow test shit. Even though that's also really economically related, like,
yeah.
but it is also the case. But let's say there is some degree of like maybe some people are better at reining in an impulse than others, like a slight average difference, right? Like that probably exists in the world a little bit.
Yeah, and there's like
Um,
genetic stuff too there where it's like there's like addiction can be addictiveness can be genetic, and that's kind of related, right?
yeah, even though again, all of these things, there's a huge amount of cultural, economic stuff that goes
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah.
But let's say self-control as a thing maybe slightly exists in the world, but we've put a lot of weird weight onto it that is not helpful. And so if you're somebody who's already really, let's say you find it easier to keep yourself from doing something that might hurt you,
Mhm.
you might be inclined to think in a more traditional and virtue associated way, right? Because you live in a culture that says, well, just don't do the bad things, right? Like that makes you a good person. It's not hard. Just make the right decisions. And if you already find it easier to rein in your impulses compared to other people, you might think, "Oh, I am a more virtuous person. I do keep my space more orderly and tidy because it's easier for me to do." You know what I mean? Like, so these things end up clustering together because of cultural associations
Yeah.
that if you already are kind of good at exerting willpower, what are you going to put that toward?
Mhm.
Maybe what society tells you to, like keeping things tidy.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so what they find is this
Yeah.
first graph A. Oh,
I was like, we should try and get through these, and then I immediately asked you a big tangential question. So I apologize. Please continue.
no, that's okay. So we do see people when they are high. That's graph A. So this is within subject. When you get high, on average, you get a little bit less self control, a little bit less orderliness, a little bit less virtue, and this is like middling statistically. Like it does go down. That's why it's in the negative, but
Right.
it's like not dramatic. The only place where it's really standing out is you're a little bit less significantly less traditionalist.
Yeah. Which
So
tracks anecdotally.
yeah, and that even goes with, like, the creativity effects, doesn't it? Like,
Yeah.
you're thinking more unconventionally, so maybe you're like, "Well, actually, maybe this thing I was judgmental about doesn't matter, man.
Yeah.
I'm
Totally.
high." Um, and why conscientiousness is assumed to be a good thing all the time is,
Right.
yeah,
As we talked about before.
right. And then on the right, graph B is, effects comparing heavy weed users to others and, regularly frequent, weed users. And we find that dispositionally, people who get high multiple times a day have lower self-control, supposedly, have lower orderliness, have lower virtue, not necessarily traditionalism. So and
What
this
the
is not as a
okay,
res
but what actually does I because all the other ones I can understand what they're but I literally don't understand what virtue means in this context.
Yeah, let's see. Virtue subscale of conscientiousness. Let me see if I can find an example item. Um,
I feel like a fucking like how much of a paladin I am. It feels like like points in virtue,
yeah,
which give me, if I have enough virtue points, I can use fucking paladin spells. Like, it doesn't.
yeah, it's very silly shit. Let me look at their specific measure of conscientiousness, um, and see. What is their
Chibo says, didn't it say more willing to lie to get what you want above in the text?
Oh, yeah, that's an example, yeah. Where's their citation for their conscientiousness measure? I'm not seeing a link to the actual measure they used. Oh, wait, table S1B. Where is that table?
Refers to how much you're willing to go on a super secret mission into 1960s Russia.
Yeah, literally. Again, it's definitely cop shit for sure. Oh, okay. The Chernishenko conscientiousness scale. Let me pull this bad boy up. Hopefully, I can find it. Sorry, everyone, for the delay here.
Oh, you're good. My valence
Sometimes it's
using
just hard to find labeled ones.
Chubby Cumcut says my valence using that's just your opinion, man. As a guiding principle, the last year has been seriously healing for me. That's so fucking good.
Dog, so true. Okay, to just give you a sense of how fucked science is, to get a copy of the scale, I had to go to somebody's Dropbox.
Wow. Oh
Yeah.
man.
So these aren't labeled, but we'll be able to infer, I think, like, orderliness is obviously the being neat. Or maybe they are sorted. Um, if I could get away with it, I would not pay taxes. That's probably a virtue. I would lie without hesitation if it serves my purpose. Yeah, this is probably the virtue
I
dimension.
wish we could do. I wish we had more time so we could do these.
We should, yeah, we should take more surveys. This is
Oh,
so
I would
fun.
love that. We could.
Yes.
Can we do a scientific? Can we do studies on our chat? Chat, would you guys do surveys for us? Would you? I've thought about this before. Like, would
Oh
you
my
guys do
God.
surveys for us? Can we do studies on you?
Oh, that would be fun. Because that's what the fetishes thing is already qualitative research, if you ask me. Like,
Yeah. Did
so
we didn't write it down? Is doing a video writing it down? Because it's science if you write it down. So is doing a
I mean,
video?
we're decolonizing academia by making a Twitch stream. Like, we're public scientists.
I love how horny everybody in the chat is for us doing science on them.
Yes. Oh my God. They're like, yes, put me under the microscope.
I want a place to talk about my bullshit so bad. Hell yes.
We know y'all do. We love it. You're so generous. I grew up on Quote TV, Quote having you quiz. Okay. Yes.
Can we get?
We'll make us.
Is there a study we could do that we could get published? Like what?
Well, we would have to do ethics board shit, which technically I could do. Yeah, I could put in a ethics board application.
We would just have to figure out what, like, us doing science on our chat. Like when
Ethically.
well ethically, but
Yeah.
also like what because it's so the data is so biased, right?
Oh, that's
So
what the word convenience sample is for, baby. That's as long as you say it's a convenience sample, you can do anything. Literally, the ROGD, the rapid onset gender dysphoria
Oh god.
research was sampled exclusively from TERF forums. So
Oh,
we can
fuck.
cook the books. We can cook the books for sure.
I mean, we definitely got enough autistics in this fucking chat to do studies on autistics for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, this is literally an autism Reddit. Like,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. Oh.
yeah, a more gender diverse autism Reddit or something. Yeah, so these are the virtue ones. If I could get away with it, I would not pay taxes. I would lie without hesitation if it serves my purpose. I could be insincere and dishonest if the situation required me to do so. This is not lacking virtue. This is fucking street smarts. If I find money laying around, I'll keep it to myself.
Pines and Sunset, thank you for following. We know you're a real one that made you follow.
Yes. Can we look at this? Can we look at the bias on this, please? If I find money laying around, I'll keep it for myself. Why? Okay. So you're saying the people who would keep money that they find are less virtuous. What might that be associated with that is not a person's moral
Poor
fortitude?
people! You fuckers! You shits!
Yes. This is literally, this is the shit. Like, all this stuff, if you're an autistic person who's a high masker, high sense of justice, a people pleaser, and you agree with all this stuff, this is the how you get played scale. Like, and it's not your fault, but please, if you can in any way, not get fucked over by doing this stuff. Like, I would rather get a bad grade than copy someone's homework and turn it in as my own. Baby, don't do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, to answer the question about how virtue was measured, it was using those questions, and I did link it in the chat.
Do you?
And we can, and so
how hard is your out? Because I know we.
It's not It's not rock hard. It's
Okay.
just kind of like, I just can't go like an hour late or something like that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Are you feeling good too?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, cool. So so people who get high hyperchronically at baseline tend to be less virtuous people, meaning they might be poor, they might be willing to cheat to get ahead.
Yeah.
Um, and that is there's a circular logic here, right?
Well, and
Because
this comes to the thing of like it's crazy to me that this study doesn't. Well, I mean, I guess so. They took demographics, right? But
Mhm.
they don't. It seems like they don't actually break any of this down from demographics. Like these are the kinds of things where we're saying obviously that like virtue is probably a income based thing. If it's like I'm more likely to take money and not return it, or I'm more likely to cheat, it's like yeah, if you have less fucking income, that makes sense.
let me look at the stats to see if they do control for demographics or if they found that they like that there was reason to. Restricted maximum likelihood within between and within subject variance, including both participant-centered and grand mean-centered versions of our fixed effect predictors. Uh, Control for prior level. No, that's just controlling for baseline where needed. So when you're doing the within subject stuff, that naturally controls for that stuff because you're only looking at one person's own change. But the between
Right.
group stuff, I don't think we control for prior levels of the predicted variable. So yeah, that's just the baseline stuff. Um, Separate models. Not a representative sample. Convenience sample, again, that lets you hand wave away a lot of things. It looks like they did not enter controls.
Okay. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, and part of that is maybe, like, even they might not have had like, it's not a totally white sample, but it is a majority white sample and things like that, so there's some things where and it is really predominantly male Reddit. Um, um So they might not have had enough people in underrepresented groups to control.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But so yeah, that's not being controlled for here, for sure.
Did they take poverty level? They took demographics, but did they take income?
Oh my god. No, they didn't, I don't think.
Yeah, but that's all
That's
normal shit. Like this is not.
mhm.
I mean, this is a criticism of the science culture rather than this article specifically.
Right. Yes. But which we should still rightly criticize them on because if they're trying to move the research forward,
Right.
you gotta question everything. Um, Very much when you're doing social psych research, they're like, "Oh, yeah, and then we'll measure demographics." And you have your standard you literally copy paste a lot of times. "Okay, we collect race this way, we collect gender this way, we're not gonna think about how to do it better, we collect age."
Yeah. I mean, we talked about like gender being like collecting data on gender is like that shit is not as simple as people think. Like so it's like
Mhm,
even majority like this population is probably majority cis, but they don't know that.
mhm,
And
right,
then even if you ask if people are trans or not, like that, then actually that gets really complicated in the ways we've talked about in the past. And I, don't know enough to know in which ways that's complicated for race, but I imagine it's even more complicated. Like
right.
yeah, we start getting into like societal ideas of what it means to be black and all this other shit, and it gets real fucking tricksy. And so it's like
Mhm.
this is stuff that is not really considered.
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's so many issues. A lot of times when they're measuring race in studies, they just reproduce what the census uses, which has
Right,
changed over time and has a lot of weird it gets real fucky. Obviously, race is just made up to justify oppression, so
right.
you're already fucked from there from the beginning. It specifically doesn't know how to handle, Latinx people at all because it's, usually white Hispanic versus white non-Hispanic, and it's that there's like a lot of different ways people identify, and also just experiences of like colorism
Yeah.
in there that are hard to categorize. And that's a problem. Like distinguishing East Asian from South Asian is weird.
Yep.
Um, like
That's a
depending on who you ask, that's a Asian identity, but then also there is colorism.
there's this there's
There's
this
into there, but
there's
you know.
this the weird thing that I've seen online where it's like if you're Asian, and somebody's like if you're from like Thailand and then the other person's like, well, you're Chinese, like that person is obviously racist. But if they're like, well,
Mhm.
you're this very specific ethnic subgroup from this, it's like, oh,
Right.
they're really racist.
Mhm.
I think the example
Right.
was like in 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 King of the Hill where they're all the like main characters are like to the neighbor is like, oh well,
Mhm.
are you Chinese or Japanese, and then Hank's dad is like, he's obviously Laotian. It's like, oh yeah, it's because he's
Yeah.
like really racist that he knows that.
Right, or like the white supremacists that are like Indian people are Caucasian or whatever, like, that's like, "Oh, you're
Yeah,
going to the old school race science, okay,
yeah.
woo."
Anyway, that's totally
Bad.
tangential,
Yeah,
but it brings up the way in which this shit is really fucking complicated that we're not
yeah,
acknowledging in this study. and yeah, I mean, really, like, I don't really put this on this study specifically. Well, I mean,
right.
I don't know, I haven't ever done fucking science, but it's like the standard should be better, and I don't know
Yeah.
exactly what the standard should be. That's a really fucking complicated question, like how we should actually do this stuff, but it should
Well,
be
yeah, you
fucking
should
better.
yeah, and in all of the labs I was in, it was always very, whatever, we measured the demographics, we always do. Instead
Yeah,
of thinking, "Why are we measuring this? How are we gonna measure it? What are the particulars of if we're studying this, how are we gonna use this variable?"
yeah,
And there have been changes in the industry since then, in the field since then, about pre-registering your what you're gonna measure and what you're gonna do with everything you measure, so it's less of a, like, mess, but yeah,
and
massive flaws still.
and it's especially a huge flaw when you're talking about fucking weed, which is extremely racialized in its carcerization. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, God, it's. I think that we'd be remiss not to mention the way in which weed is racialized, because that is the history of our country, and it's still, even in these legal places, black men are in prison still. We did not fucking uh uh commute the sentences of all the fucking black people we put in prison for weed. And so now,
Mhm.
um Seth Rogen can go on stage and light a giant bong while, black people are in prison for fucking selling a gram of weed.
Right,
So,
and it's really important when you're talking about motivations for using weed and emotionality,
yeah.
because there's a ton of literature, this surprises no one, who listens or lives this stuff, but, being Black in America is a state of chronic physical and psychological stress
Yeah. And trauma. Yeah.
and trauma, and so that affects everything about a person's health outcomes, which also is related to what in studies get categorized as health behaviors: drinking, eating, exercise, smoking, using weed, using drugs. Um, and it's looking at it from completely the wrong angle and not in the full context. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ideally, this study should have been done from a demographics first thing, right? Like, I think most, like, that should have been, it would have been much more um, detailed and interesting if it had sorted that stuff out and not thought of it as seemingly an afterthought. Um,
Yeah, the part of why that doesn't happen is because if you're gonna look at any between groups effects, adding another variable, then you're looking at you need 2,000 people in your study instead of 200, right?
yeah. How many
If you
people
wanna
did this
fairly
have?
look at those things. 200,
Okay.
260
Yeah, that makes
people.
sense.
And that's from surveying thousands and then only 200 qualified. So, not to excuse it, And this is why we just need to like put more money into science, particularly into funding research by scholars of color
Yeah.
to do that kind of stuff. But that's also part of why we don't get that granularity is you don't have enough people to find those effects. So then you just go, well, we'll just throw everybody in together,
Right.
which means you miss a lot of the story.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, we find statistically that people who smoke weed a lot have dispositionally lower self-control, virtue, and orderliness. Let's actually look maybe real quick at how self-control was measured in that survey. Just like an example item real quick. Uh, there's the like virtue stuff.
God, I believe people should be allowed to take drugs as long as it doesn't affect others.
How are you going to use that in a weed survey?
Yeah.
Like a lot of these are about honestly, okay, these might be self-control right here, actually. If I find money lying around, I'll keep it to myself. And then virtue is this stuff about punishment. I support long established rules and traditions. That's traditionalism. But like
Yeah, they might all be mixed
people who
in.
know me best would say that I am honest and things like that. They seem to be in order because the orderliness stuff is really pretty clear
Yeah.
at the top. Um, so yeah, a lot of these are about like the delaying gratification kind of thing. But it's so embedded with following the law
Yeah.
and personal and protecting yourself. So that's the overall trend in what they find. Um, and lower willpower, though again, that's pretty pretty similar to self-control there. So that's the one case where I guess it kind of aligns with stereotypes, but at the same time, if you are less virtue-minded, you're gonna be more willing to use a drug in a world where people tell you you're a bad person if you use drugs all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the final effect, weed hangover. Some users report feeling different the day after or hours after being high, akin to a hangover after drinking. We examined if feeling high during the last survey related to current states. So they looked at, okay, earlier today you said you were high. How do you feel now? Even if you haven't had more weed, and kind of controlling for that. And they found feeling high in the last survey measured hours earlier was not associated with current emotions. So whatever emotional effects you get from getting high, a few hours later, you don't see those if you're not still high. Makes sense? Uh, we also failed to find any next day emotional effects, meaning that being high on the last completed survey was unrelated to emotions and no effects on motivation as well, or on still feeling high. So, so their overall conclusion there is, at least among chronic users, the effect of using weed are short-lived, and the emotional effects, motivational effects, which are already modest, um, all of that stuff does not, and even just feeling high, that does not carry over into the next day.
Yeah. Unless you fucking eat a whole tray of brownies, then you'll feel high for 3 days. That's the thing, but probably not statistically significant enough to fucking matter. And that's not really a
Right.
hangover. That's like you're just still fucking high.
Right. Yeah. And again, autistic people sometimes are super sensitive to drugs, so it hits harder, lasts longer. So I've described myself as having a weed hangover, but it is actually just I'm still high
Yeah,
the
that
next
makes
day.
sense.
That's what it actually is. Maybe a little milder, like, oh, I'm just a little floaty, but that's still just high.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, yeah, so that's basically the study. This is just a summary in the discussion, kind of saying like future research needs to compare to non-users. We need a control group. We don't have that. There needs to be more research using this experience sampling procedure. There needs to be more research that is just treating weed neutrally and just accepting that a lot of people use it, and that's not a moral panic, and all that good stuff. Um, yeah.
Who wrote this? I feel like we should.
Yeah, we can shout out the authors. Michael Inslicht, Taylor Bridget, Sparrow Mungal, Gregory John DePau. Let's make
Good
sure
job.
that's all the authors here. Yeah, that's all of them. Yeah, great job, y'all. Out of the University of Toronto.
Shout out Toronto.
Shout out Toronto, blaze it.
Is weed legal there?
Why do I not know that?
Yeah, I don't
think
really
so.
know. I think weed is largely legal in Canada, but I think it is like us, case by case.
I can't believe I don't know that. I mean, yeah, but both recreational and medicinal purposes. Looks like everywhere.
In Canada?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I didn't
Cool.
realize that.
Yeah. Hi. Yeah. As of October 2018 was when it became nationwide. Cool. And that's also makes it easier to do this kind of research. And that's also a huge bias into this stuff.
Yeah. I love the idea of doing science on on our chat.
On our little worms.
I love this idea so much. Please give us ideas for what you think that should be. Follow the Piscord because that's probably where it'll happen. And give us there's a whole stream suggestion channel.
Yeah, segment ideas or whatever it's called, or submissions.
Yep. Call me a worm
again. Call me a worm again. Tough toots. I love that it's somebody who's not blowing up the chat all the time. Who's like, please, I'm gonna stop lurking to say, please call me a worm. Oh my god.
Some deep cuts from embraceautism.com. Your first time chat, so I am a little skeptical of that website.
Oh no, these are autism surveys. I mean, we can talk about them. Actually, yeah, we should talk about why we should go through some autism assessments and why they're so booty and shitty.
Yeah, we can do me because I'm technically not autistic.
What if we make you autistic?
You may have already. We'll see. Chat, here's a poll. Vote if I'm autistic.
Oh my god.
I have ADHD. That's basically the same thing. We've discussed this.
It's fam. Yeah, check out the autism versus ADHD stream if you want to delve into that.
Waluigi Bowser Jr. Sounds like it is a good stream site. I just it was from a first time chat, so I was skeptical, but Devin.
I mean, all the measures are bad. Like I like they've got if you want to look at the traditional autism assessments, it's a great place to like look at them for free. And the site is fine, but those measures suck. Like that's psychiatry's fault. That's not Embrace Autism's fault.
Right. But yeah. Join our Piscord. I'm gonna show chat the thumbnail. Guys, I did an edit. It's not it's like when we went live, it was like buffering or whatever. Guys, look, we're YouTube. This is the thumbnail I made. So if you haven't already, please go follow the YouTube channel. I took like almost 20 minutes off of our conversation with the protesters last week. So if you did not catch that stream and you didn't catch the unedited VOD that was up earlier this week, this is definitely going to be a great time and a great one to share. I thought that was an amazing conversation, and the edit, I just took out all the dead air and the and ums. And so it's much more, I think it's very, very more so watchable than a straight VOD.
Yeah, and if you haven't already, please follow our YouTube. I'll drop a link. We're trying to we qualify now for some monetization, but not some other stuff. And we
don't get money for views. So we thought
Yeah, or
that
like
we were going to
ads or
cross
whatever.
that threshold when we were asking people for views and subs. But actually now we're not
You have
yet
to hit a
in.
threshold. Yeah.
Yeah, for that we need to hit another threshold. But now you can subscribe on. I don't think we've turned it on, but you technically can like subscribe for money on YouTube, which we don't recommend just because we're not doing that. Subbing on here uh, is the way to go for right now. If you want to help us. But yeah, definitely join the YouTube, join the Piscord, follow us on
Mhm.
social medias. Devin is still posting a bunch of posts great fucking articles on his Substack every two weeks, or is it every week?
Yeah. Yeah, every 2 weeks. Sometimes a bonus, if
If you're feeling froggy.
yeah, if I'm feeling froggy.
All right. Um, but yeah, let's find somebody to raid.
Okay. Oh, it looks like, Botster, that's, Bunlith, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. That'd be fun. We love.
Yeah, she's playing Nightmare Cart.
You want to do that? My raid thing is
Sure, yeah, let me,
ran again.
yeah, no problem. Let me open this.
Bezos, please fix.
Fix rating. Fix OBS.
It's specifically rating when you're logged in as a manager of an account and not as the account.
So weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But thank you everybody.
Yeah, thank you for being here, everyone. This was a really rich discussion.
Yeah.
Great turnout too. Like, just glad people were excited about this conversation. And I forgot that, like, I don't know. Studying social psychology was so traumatic and dispiriting for me that I forgot that I like talking about design, survey design, and measurement, and how it can go well and how it can go wrong. So
I'm so
this was
fascinated
nice.
by it. Yeah, I want to do this a lot more. This is really this feels like a thing I want to be a big part of this stream that we